The next morning dawned bright and clear. Colin stirred awake, stretching as he rose from the plush comfort of his bed. After a quick wash, he stepped into the dining area, where Renee had already prepared a steaming breakfast. The aroma of freshly baked bread and hot tea filled the air. Glancing at his pocket watch, he noted the time, 6:43 a.m. He had only slept 4 hours, yet he felt remarkably refreshed, as if fatigue had no hold on him. His gaze shifted to the gold paper, where every metric of his progress had improved. Seeing tangible advancement each day was intoxicating, a quiet thrill running through him. The work at the inspection office was considerably less taxing than his night shifts with the West City Guards. He could afford to indulge in the luxuries of life, especially with his wealth in magic stones making him one of Black Rock City's financial elite. Yet, this world lacked entertainment, and besides, nothing compared to the satisfaction of cultivation. Perhaps that was just human nature. When progress was invisible, persistence wavered. But when improvement was clear, even the most monotonous tasks became an obsession. Colin sighed inwardly. If only he could devote all his time to training. Even though his duties at the inspection office were light, mundane matters still demanded his attention. However, he couldn't complain. The benefits he received from the school far outweighed the minor inconveniences of his work. After breakfast, he boarded his carriage and set off for number 79 Tulip Street. He had arranged to meet Regina there for another examination of the crime scene. Perhaps a second look would yield new insights. Upon arrival, he spotted 2 carriages parked at the gate. The first, adorned with gilded patterns and drawn by a maroon horse, belonged to Regina. The second was larger, plain black, and harnessed to 2 horses, likely belonging to Captain Flower. Colin stepped into the yard and entered the master bedroom, where Regina stood beside the pink-canopied bed. Next to her loomed the imposing figure of Captain Flower, confirming his earlier guess. Flower gave a curt nod, his sharp eyes scanning the lifeless body on the bed. Regina turned and, in a hushed voice, explained, "After hearing that we found no traces, Captain Flower decided to take another look." Colin nodded, realization dawning. "I was here briefly at the start," Flower interjected. "I didn't pay much mind then, but I never expected even your cat, Regina, to find nothing." As he spoke, he performed witchcraft, perception enhancement. A dense surge of magic coursed through his body, concentrating in his eyes, nose, and ears. Colin focused, and though only a day had passed, the eerie sensation in the room had faded somewhat. He directed his full attention to Lisa's body beneath the pink bed curtains. Slowly, like a relief carving unveiled by time, strange markings began to manifest, a red and black aura swirling across the corpse's skin. This was not a color visible to the naked eye, but something sensed, something felt. A shiver crawled up his spine as an inexplicable horror pressed against his mind, a sharp, intrusive sensation like a needle piercing his forehead. Suppressing the irrational fear, Colin examined the markings closely. The most concentrated areas of red and black were prominent, while fainter mist-like traces lingered elsewhere on the corpse. Did this indicate prolonged contact? No, something felt off. The fading mist suggested something different. Not prolonged exposure, but freshness. The older traces had started to dissipate. A chilling realization struck him. The murder had been here last night. A flicker of unease crossed Colin's expression. If he had arrived here rashly the previous night. "There's nothing," Flower suddenly announced, breaking the silence. The magic dissipated from his face as he shook his head. Colin exhaled slowly, letting his focus drift away from the red mist. As he did, the fear subsided, vanishing like a nightmare upon waking. "Thank you, Lord Flower," Regina said, disappointment evident in her voice. Colin studied Flower. Did even he fail to notice anything strange? Flower circled the room once more, then sighed. "There's nothing, perhaps another bizarre incident." Regina nodded. "It seems that way." Colin agreed. The world was full of unexplainable phenomena, objects, and places, collectively labeled as strange. But this case didn't quite fit into that category. Standing in the spacious master bedroom, Colin's expression was unreadable. Golden sunlight filtered through the windows, casting long beams across the moon-patterned carpet. The scene should have been tranquil. Yet beneath the pink bed curtains, the contorted, lifeless body and the faint red mist infused the air with unease. Flower stood at the doorway, his voice grave. "Continue investigating. If we still find nothing, we'll classify it as a strange incident for now." A sigh escaped him. His certainty wavered. Perhaps this had nothing to do with the flesh and thorns cult after all. Just a coincidence. Yet he couldn't be blamed for suspecting otherwise. The inspection office was only recently established, and the Catherine case was still fresh in his mind. His instincts had led him to connect the two. He gave the final order. Clean the scene. If no further traces could be found, there was no reason to keep the crime scene intact. The summer heat would only hasten the body's decay, attracting pests. With heavy steps, he climbed into his carriage. "Drive," he commanded. The coachman snapped the reins, and the black carriage slowly pulled away. Colin watched the retreating vehicle, about to turn away, when something caught his eye. Feigning nonchalance, he cast a second glance toward the street corner at the edge of his vision. Hawker stalls lined the roadside. A vendor selling grilled fish and toasted bread stood in the middle of the cluster. Yet Colin's attention flickered to a different stall at the far end, the one selling live fish. A middle-aged man was packing his things, preparing to leave. His attire was unremarkable, plain gray linen. His skin was tanned, his expression vacant, his presence utterly ordinary. Too ordinary. Yet in Colin's enhanced perception, the man stood apart. The faint red mist, the same mist that clung to Lisa's corpse, hovered around him, marking him in Colin's sight as something more than just another vendor. "Colin, what is it?" Regina asked, puzzled. Following his gaze, she chuckled. "Didn't you have breakfast this morning?" Colin hesitated before responding. "I did, but I feel hungry again." Regina smirked. "Seems like your maid isn't doing her job properly." "Maybe." Colin forced a smile, shaking his head. Then, pointing to his carriage, he added, "I'll ask my coachman to give me something to eat. In the meantime, why don't you arrange for the guards to clean the scene?" "All right." Colin nodded, then turned, walking toward his carriage, his mind already set on following the man from the fish stall. Tap, tap, tap. Colin sat quietly in the carriage, listening intently to Arthur's report while a grilled fish rested beside him. The house had already been tidied up when Arthur returned. Now, at Regina's suggestion, they were en route to the inspectorate's archives. Before long, Arthur concluded his report. "Master, this is what I have learned." Colin exhaled. Almost at the same time, the carriage arrived at their destination. Acknowledging Arthur's words with a simple nod, Colin stepped out and followed Regina into the archives. As soon as they entered, Regina wasted no time, rifling through the files at a rapid pace. Colin, remaining composed, methodically flipped through documents, waiting for a breakthrough. Time passed unnoticed until Regina finally sighed in frustration, her brows furrowing. There are still no clues. She set the file down with a sense of resignation. Perhaps this really is just another strange incident. She hesitated before adding, "Even if it's not, without any leads, we shouldn't waste too much time chasing shadows." Colin remained silent. Had he not sensed something off, he might have agreed, shelving the case like any other unsolved mystery. That was common practice in this world. After all, the deaths were just ordinary people. Had it involved wizards, the situation might be different. If someone as notable as Berkeley were implicated, the case might even reach the ears of the rap wizard himself. But this was just 13 seemingly insignificant individuals. Colin sighed inwardly. He had no aspirations of acting as an enforcer of justice. However, the establishment of the inspection office holds final words, and the interest Berkeley and others had in these incidents all hinted at something deeper, something troubling. No supernatural power on this island should exist outside the school's control. That was an iron rule. Colin understood that better than anyone. The stability of the school depended on it. Perhaps there are other possibilities, Colin mused aloud, setting down the file. Arthur had inquired about the mysterious middle-aged man after he left. Most vendors knew nothing of him, except for the one selling grilled fish. A mere 10 copper coins loosened his tongue. The man's name was Phil, a fisherman who lived in the western slums. He frequently sold his catch at the market. He lived alone, without friends or relatives, though rumors suggested he had once been married. By sheer coincidence, his wife had left him precisely 2 years ago. Other possibilities? Regina echoed, intrigued. Yes. Colin stood, returning the file to the shelf. Maybe we've been looking in the wrong direction. Maybe it's not as complex as we thought. He turned to face Regina, his voice steady. Lisa, the woman murdered at Tulip number 79, had a husband before she became Piga's mistress. She abandoned him to be with Pigu. Regina smirked. You're suggesting her former husband killed her? She had known this detail from the start. Perhaps, Colin admitted, ignoring the teasing in her voice. At the very least, Lisa's original husband had a strong motive. Regina shook her head. An ordinary fisherman? Killing someone in such a supernatural manner? Come on, Colin. Then why not go and ask him? Colin challenged. Regina sighed, placing her files back on the shelf. I already sent guards to investigate him before you arrived. His name is Phil, or something close. But no matter how you look at it, he's just an ordinary fisherman. Colin said nothing. He knew that whether or not Phil was the murderer, he was undeniably connected to the case. But how could he explain his certainty? They packed away their files and left the archives. It was Monday, another workday. Regina took her usual seat by the window in the first-floor lobby, pulling out a thick book. Colin sat across from her, occupying the same seat he had when he first joined. He retrieved Hope's defensive force field and examined it closely. Though the inspection office had a basement training ground, it wasn't ideal for practice. The unique nature of his gold paper training required him to exert maximum effort, something that would quickly draw suspicion. For traditional wizards, mastering witchcraft wasn't just about practice, but also about deep study. Simply casting spells from recorded instructions wasn't true mastery. Only by understanding the underlying principles could one truly control magic. Take Fireball, for instance. When first learned, all fireballs were identical. Same size, same speed, same detonation timing. But a true master could modify every aspect at will. Witchcraft was more than just formulas. The principles behind them were what truly mattered. Unfortunately, for Colin, theoretical study wasn't nearly as effective as the gold paper's direct practice method. Even so, he could still refine his understanding. He turned the manuscript's pages, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The invisible red mist continued to unsettle him. He lived on this island now. His fate was intertwined with the rap schools. Creak. A door opened abruptly, shattering his train of thought. A knight clad in steel armor strode in. He removed his helmet and placed a hand over his chest in a formal salute. Then, in a clear, urgent voice, he announced, "The heart-picking devil has struck again." Colin's expression darkened as he slowly put down the manuscript. The term heart-picking devil was what the guards had come to call the perpetrator of the Tulip Street murders. "Give us the details," Regina commanded, setting her book aside, her brows furrowed in concern.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Sunlight shines into the spacious and bright hall of the inspection office. The guards in steel armor lowered their heads respectfully. "My lord," that's what happened. Regina put away the book in her hand, with some surprise in her eyes. "You mean, Pigu died? Died in the house of his other mistress?" "Yes, sir. Not only Pigu, but everyone there is dead." The guard responded without hesitation. He happened to recognize Pigu. He was the one who called Pigu for questioning last time. First it was Lisa, then Pigu. Both were still digging out their hearts without leaving any trace. What a coincidence, Colin emphasized in a deep voice. Regina turned to look at him and murmured, "Yes, what a coincidence." Lisa, Pigu, if there is any common connection between these two people, or a common enemy, it can only be. She was inexplicably reminded of Colin's speculation just now. "You're right, Colin. Phil is suspected no matter what." Regina took a breath and stood up. "Without further ado, go and catch him now." She acted resolutely, and was about to lead the guards outside the inspection office. Originally, she would not have suspected Phil. After all, she had already asked the guards to investigate once, and he was just an ordinary fisherman. But now Pigu is dead too. If only Lisa died, then Phil's suspicion might be only 10%, but now this suspicion has increased to at least half. Wait! Colin stretched out his hand to stop her. Pigu is also an intermediate apprentice. He continued without giving Regina a chance to refute. I know that compared to wizards from our school, Pigu is much weaker as a wild wizard. But to be on the safe side, I'd better go and report to Lord Flower first. The scholastic wizard who has received systematic education and the wild wizard who has become a monk halfway are completely different concepts. Take learning witchcraft as an example. The wizards of their school can use the knowledge they have learned in the past to understand the principles behind witchcraft so that they can send and receive freely and even innovate. However, wild wizards often do not have a sound knowledge system, and it is difficult to fully understand the principles behind witchcraft, and it is also difficult to fully master a witchcraft to the point of mastery. Regina paused, looked at Colin, and frowned slightly. But he immediately let go, nodded, and said, "You're right, Colin." The two came to Flower's office to report the situation to him. I see. After a while, Flower sat behind the brown mahogany table and nodded. He thought quietly for a moment and then said, "I will go with you." Yes. Colin and the two nodded. Flower stood up and walked toward the door. But when he reached the door, he paused for a moment, feeling a little doubtful. If it is really the flesh and thorn cult, I may not be able to handle it on my own. Do I need to report to Lord Hongyan and Lord Price? His brows were furrowed, and his eyes looked even smaller due to the accumulation of fat. "What's the matter, Captain Flower?" Regina asked. "Nothing." Flower relaxed his brows, replied calmly, and continued walking forward. "Nothing has been determined yet, so rashly reporting to Lord Hongyan and the others is not a wise move." He led Colin and the two to the stairs and was about to go downstairs. But he shook his head again, turned around, and Colin and the two said, "You guys wait for me here for a while." Both Colin and Colin were a little confused, but they didn't dare to ask more questions. They just watched Flower return to the office quietly. Asterisk, 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 in a dark basement. Boom! Bowen pushed open the wooden door, lifted his black hood, looked at Soroyan sitting in front of him behind a low table, and said angrily, "An intermediate wizard apprentice is dead. Do you want us all to be exposed?" "Don't worry, my friend." Soroyan put a smile on his lips and spoke in a soothing tone. "On the entire island, my Lord's scarlet mist can be seen except for us devout believers. Maybe it's just that rotten old man rap. Besides, I will pick up the heart of revenge later and take back the scarlet mist. Soon, all traces will dissipate. By that time, even if Rap came in person, all he could see was Phil Ordinary's body." Bowen's face brightened slightly. A soul that has not been strengthened and sublimated will indeed be unable to feel the scarlet miracle of the Lord. But his tone was still a little cold, and he continued to ask, "Before this, revenge has ended. Why don't you recycle the scarlet mist in time?" Soroyan shook his head, his voice rose slightly, and he continued in a positive tone. "Phil's revenge has only now come to a successful end." Soroyan turned to look at Bowen. Phil never resented his wife, Lisa, even though she abandoned him and strangled the young children to death. He put his right hand on his cheek, rubbed it gently, and said softly in a chanting tone, "Phil, what I hate is Pigu, the wizard, the high-ranking wizard on the island." Bowen said nothing. Soroyan chuckled again, put down his right hand that was rubbing his cheek, and comforted, "Don't worry, I will take back the scarlet mist right away. Moreover, if you think about it on the bright side, this one has absorbed the revengeful heart of the intermediate wizard apprentice, which is comparable to hundreds of ordinary revengeful hearts." Asterisk, asterisk, west of the city, slums. It was now approaching dusk. In a dilapidated shack, Phil was lying on the straw mat, looking at the palm leaf roof. Perhaps there were wooden racks for drying fish, and the entire shack was filled with the fishy smell of sea fish. But he has long been accustomed to this smell. The rich, golden sunlight of the setting sun shines through the hole in the roof and shines on him, but it cannot bring him any warmth. Phil looked blank. If you look closely, you can find memories or aftertaste in his dead eyes. Lisa, he slowly raised his right hand, as if to catch the golden light beam projected in front of him. But how can I catch the light? Ah! The next second, his rough, dark palms that were reaching for the light were instantly transformed into ferocious claws made of invisible scarlet mist. The sun still shines through unobstructed. Phil's vision became blurry. Lisa! Lisa! The sun was setting at this moment, and the sky was clear. But he seemed to be in that dark, windy, and rainy night 2 years ago. The greatest happiness in his life. It was 4 years ago that I met Lisa, the beautiful Lisa. She was so beautiful that he still couldn't believe that he had her. Moreover, as if a gift from fate, Lisa became pregnant within a few days of being with him and brought him a baby. He loved Lisa very much. Maybe that's why. He never let her do any work. He went out fishing every day before dawn and didn't come back until late at night. Although life was hard and difficult at that time, it was the happiest time for him until that nightmarish night comes. That afternoon, he caught a huge sea fish and rushed to the market to sell it while the fish was still fresh. As night fell, he walked home with a large bag containing a rose-patterned skirt that Lisa liked. He was looking forward to Lisa's surprise. He is looking forward to returning home. What I saw was an empty shack and a small figure that had lost its warmth. Phil, it's time. A familiar voice suddenly came from my ears. Phil paused, put down his arms, and turned over to get up. He stood by the bed and looked at Soroyan, who walked into the shack with tears in his eyes. He stepped forward and came to Soroyan. The light coming from the left-hand window split their faces into two sides, light and dark. Phil's face was calm, but tears kept pouring out. He never hated Lisa. He only hates this island and the superior wizard who took Lisa away. I just hate that he is an ordinary person. After a while, he moved his lips and murmured in an undetectable voice, "Sir, will our Lord really redeem us?" A faint smile appeared on Soroyan's lips, and his eyes were calm and solemn. Of course, flesh and blood are equal, and our Lord will redeem this island. He paused and chanted, "One day, the Lord of flesh and thorns will return. He is wrath, and he is redemption. The invisible scarlet mist will ignite the eternal flame of revenge. The eternal flames of revenge will burn the whole world with rage, and we will all be saved in the flames. In such chance, phew!" Phil waved his sharp claws composed of invisible scarlet mist, inserted it into his chest, took out the beating hot heart, and slowly handed it to Soroyan. Then he leaned against the wall, slid down, and sat down under the window. Before his head lowered and his eyes dimmed, he raised his head with his last strength. He glanced at the small skull on the bedside and the silver bracelet belonging to Lisa next to it. The sky is getting dark and the sun is setting in the west. Soroyan, dressed as a fisherman, slowly walked out of the shack next door, carrying a load of salted fish on his shoulders. After carefully looking around, Soroyan stepped to the left and walked into the crowd. Just when he walked into the crowd, he suddenly caught a glimpse of two wizards, a man and a woman, approaching from the far corner of the street, guarded by several steel-armored guards. Soroyan continued to move forward, with a calm expression and no fear at all. He knew these two wizards and had seen them before at number 79 Tulip Street. They are just two intermediate wizard apprentices who can be killed easily. He glanced at the silver badges on their chests and walked to the street with a dull expression. After finding a suitable angle, Soroyan put down the burden of salted fish, placed the bamboo basket full of salted fish, and sat on the ground. After doing this, he blended in with the surrounding vendors, and together they secretly glanced at the two wizards with awe as they walked into the dilapidated shack. But unlike the vendors next to him, behind the templated fear in Soroyan's eyes, there was also a trace of undetectable expectation. Boom! The wooden door was violently kicked open by the guards. The two shield-wielding guards clenched the shields engraved with the symbol of the rap school, took a deep breath, and entered the house first. Colin and Regina stood outside the door, magic brewing in their hands. Regina looked alert and tensed her body. The black cat beside her had turned into a giant beast, protecting her behind her. Colin also looked wary, but if you look closely, you can see that the depths of his eyes gradually became calmer. After the guards broke down the door, he concentrated on observing carefully. Although he couldn't see the specific situation clearly, the scarlet aura inside was weak. Fisherman Phil either left or had other circumstances. My lord, there is only one body inside. Soon, the guards who entered found out the specific situation inside and turned around to report to Colin and the two. It also verified Colin's guess. Regina frowned, pushed aside the guards, and strode inside. Colin followed. Although the shack is shabby and small, it still has several rooms. After walking through the entrance hall, they found Phil's body in the back room on the right. This fisherman's heart was removed just like the previous corpse. The body was now sitting under the window, leaning against the wall, with its head hung low. Regina waved silently. The huge black cat squeezed into this room, which was a bit cramped for it, and sniffed Phil's body. After a while, he returned to Regina and let out a low growl. Damn it! Regina sighed and dispersed to detect witchcraft. Turning to Colin, he said, inform the captain and the others. Everything is safe here. There is only one body. Previously, after the two of them reported to Captain Flower. To be on the safe side, Flower decided to come with them. But when he reached the stairs, he turned back to the office. Later, Colin and Regina learned that Flower had gone back to report the incident to Berkeley and Price. Not long after, Berkeley and Price came to the inspection office one after another. After the three people discussed it, they decided to let Colin and Regina come to check the situation openly. In order to prevent others from alerting others, they hid in an alleyway not far away. In this way, I hope it will lead to more people behind the scenes. Colin frowned and didn't answer. He concentrated, observing the body. For the scarlet mist, he had to concentrate very hard to detect it clearly. Otherwise, there would only be an extremely weak, strange feeling, which would be easily ignored by him. In fact, if he hadn't stayed at Tulip 79 for long enough, he wouldn't have noticed anything strange at all. As he began to concentrate, the familiar feeling of being washed away by bluestone emerged again. And with it comes the same familiar feeling of horror. A faint red mist appeared on Phil's body. The hole in his chest was the most severe, but it was also very thin. Buzz! The magic power is condensed, and Regina on the side is performing fireworks, preparing to release a safety signal. Colin subconsciously turned his head and looked away. But when his eyes glanced at the window above Phil's body, his pupils shrank slightly. Without pausing, he continued to turn his head and stare to the left side of the window. He seemed to be examining the blood stains on the wall, but his attention was entirely focused on his peripheral vision. Through the wooden stick grid window, he noticed scarlet mist emerging on the roadside in the distance. It was an ordinary middle-aged man like Phil. He looked at the shack seriously. Colin's heart skipped a beat. Due to the movement of them coming to the door, there were no pedestrians around the shack. The closest one to them was the middle-aged man's small vendor. It stands to reason that Master Hung Yin and Lord Price should have seen the middle-aged man long ago. Even they couldn't detect the strangeness of that man. Colin once again realized how abnormal it was that he could detect the scarlet mist. The next moment he suddenly frowned. From the corner of his eye, the middle-aged man shrouded in scarlet mist had begun to pack up the stall and seemed to be preparing to leave. On the side, Regina's magic power gradually gathered, and the fireworks technique that represented a safety signal was about to be cast by her. A large number of thoughts quickly flashed through Colin's mind. He looked at Regina, suddenly had a thought in his mind, and snorted heavily. If you had listened to me earlier, you would have failed. Regina on the side paused when she heard the words, and the fireworks technique that was about to take shape in her hands suddenly dissipated. Colin, what do you mean? Regina raised her eyebrows. Roar! The black cat on the side also took a few steps forward, lowered his body, and roared at Colin with bared teeth. Colin paused, and seemed to realize that he had made a mistake, and turned around with a cold face. He looked at Phil's body, as if he was still a little angry, and continued to snort. The cunning heart-eating devil. As if he was still angry, he took out a solid cone bullet from his arms and angrily shot Phil's body leaning against the wall. Laugh! With the powerful kinetic energy given to the cone bullet by the arrow shooting technique, the metal cone bullet passed through Phil's body in the blink of an eye, just like passing through a piece of paper. The thin wooden board behind it seemed like nothing. After shooting through them, the metal cone bullet did not stop at all and shot quickly towards an ordinary-looking middle-aged man on the roadside in the distance. Time goes back a few seconds. Soroyan stared at the shack not far away with his peripheral vision. Through the window, with his extraordinary hearing, he could clearly hear Colin's angry words. There was a smile on his lips. How could my lord's power be discovered by just an ordinary intermediate apprentice like you? He loved to see this scene the most, and he loved to see the helpless look of these pretentious wizards when facing the Scarlet Mist. However, the show is over. Now it's time to go. He stood up and picked up the bamboo basket full of salted fish again. Boom! But at this moment, a pinprick-like sense of crisis hit him. Can't escape. Without any time to think about it, he subconsciously used defensive magic. His dark skin quickly faded, revealing its original pale color, and dark red lines spread all over his body in an instant. Ding! The cone bullet collided with the skin, penetrated only a little, then lost kinetic energy and stopped. Ah! The vendor next to him finally realized what he was doing and fled in all directions. The flesh and blood on the waist squirmed, expelling the twisted cone bullets. Soroyan raised his head with some fear and glared at the astonished Colin and Regina at the window of the shed not far away. Then he frowned and raised his arms. Let's make a quick decision. Ah! But the next moment, there was a sudden sound of wind behind him. His expression suddenly changed, and he turned around hurriedly. What caught his eye were three figures exuding powerful power. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Collect carefully. Don't let anything go. Still in that dilapidated shack, but night has fallen. Colin and Regina stood aside, watching the guard captain instructing the team members to carefully pack things in the house. With the Berkeley trio here, Soroyan's fate was inevitable. Unfortunately, Soroyan committed suicide in the end, leaving no one alive. At this time, his body had been taken to the lab wizard by Berkeley and others. Colin and Regina were ordered to direct the guards to pack up and seal everything in the shed. Colin leaned against the wall with a calm expression. Regina, in front of him, was constantly looking at him. Ever since he fired the cone bomb, Regina looked at him like this with a ghostly look, seemingly forgetting her previous anger at her words. Sighing slightly in his heart, he stepped over Regina and took a step forward. "What's this?" he asked, pointing to the unformed skull on the bedside and the silver bracelet next to it. Regina from behind looked at Colin's back and shook her head imperceptibly to dispel the bizarre speculation in her heart. Probably just a coincidence. She also walked forward and came to the bed. This should be the skull of Phil's son. She looked at the small skull and said, "The guards investigated and said that Phil once had a son." Regina moved her eyes to the bracelet again and said hesitantly, "This seems to be the signature bracelet of the prostitutes in the Giant Axe Tavern." Yeah, Colin was a little confused. Why is there the bracelet of the prostitute of the Giant Axe Tavern here? But he didn't think too much, just nodded slightly and watched the guards carefully put the skull and bracelet into the wooden box. "You mean Lisa was originally a prostitute at the Giant Axe Tavern and was later kicked out of the tavern because she deliberately got pregnant with a customer's child?" The lobby on the first floor of the inspection office. Beside the log-colored window, the sun shines on it. Colin and Regina were sitting opposite each other on the gray woolen single sofa, talking. Colin looked a little surprised. "Yes." Regina nodded, smoothed the hair beside her ears, and sighed. "So, Phil's son is not his biological son?" Colin put down the book with a strange look on his face. "If there is no accident, it should be." Regina responded again, not knowing what expression to make on her face. At this time, about a month had passed since the last time he went to the shanty town to arrest Phil. During this period, the inspection office conducted a detailed investigation of Lisa and Phil, including their identities, past experiences, and interpersonal relationships. There is nothing special about Phil. He is a fisherman born and raised on the island. His past experiences are no different from those of ordinary fishermen. They are all simple, clear, and clear. But his ex-wife, Lisa, had a much more complicated story. Although Lisa is just an ordinary person, her grandfather was actually a junior wizard apprentice, working for the Blackstone family that once ruled the island. Then there are the common cliché stories of family fortunes, class decline, and girls becoming prostitutes, unwilling to lose their status and trying to live a prosperous life again. Regina sighed again. Only with power can you control your own destiny. Maggie. She turned her head and called to the black cat lying beside her. Maggie's ears twitched slightly. She jumped onto Regina's lap, curled up into a ball, lay down again, and allowed Regina to caress her as much as she wanted. Colin rubbed the manuscript in his hand slightly and remained silent. Perhaps it was his last cone shot in the shack that really shocked Regina. In short, after that, Regina not only did not hold a grudge because of his last remarks, but instead took the initiative to get acquainted with him. Up to now, although they are not very good friends, they can still talk to each other when they are on duty. I'm ready to advance to the advanced wizard apprenticeship. After a while, Regina stroked the black cat Maggie and said suddenly, "Congratulations." Colin raised his eyebrows slightly, put down the manuscript, and congratulated. "Thank you." Regina forced a smile, and she let go of the hand touching Maggie. "I don't know if it will succeed." There was confusion and fear in her tone. He sighed slightly and murmured, "The end of knowledge is weirdness, and the only beacon that anchors reason is human nature." Colin took the next sentence at the right moment. Compared with junior and intermediate levels, advanced wizard apprentices are relatively special. Starting from this state, the fog lingering in the spirit will gradually dissipate, which also means that they will truly begin to come into contact with the reality of the world. This reality is the filthy nonsense that spreads throughout the world. They distort knowledge. If you can't maintain your humanity, if you don't master knowledge well, you will pay the price. The costs come in all shapes and sizes, ranging from light to heavy, some permanent, some temporary. But no matter what, this is every wizard's biggest secret, and no one will reveal it easily. However, in reality, there are always costs that are hard to hide. For example, Flower's gluttony and anorexia. At this point, Colin thought of Holt again. Perhaps Holt's love of sunbathing is also part of the price. Although some of these costs are permanent, most of them will gradually weaken or even disappear with the deepening of knowledge understanding. One of the manifestations of Berkeley's status as a peak wizard apprentice is that there are no obvious abnormalities like Holt and Flower. There was a sudden silence between the two of them. Regina should be worried about whether she can successfully advance. Colin, on the other hand, was thinking that the knowledge gained from breaking through the golden paper can be directly and completely mastered without learning. I wonder if it can reduce part of the cost? After a while, Regina seemed to adjust her mood, looked at Colin, and suddenly thought about it and invited. "Tomorrow there will be a small gathering among us wizards from the patrol office. Are you interested in coming?" As soon as Regina finished speaking, she felt a little regretful. She suddenly thought that most of the people attending this party were members of the original patrol led by the wizard on the mountain. Reunion? Yes, or it's more like a party. Let's get to know each other and share some experiences and insights of wizard training. Regina paused and then said, "It's okay if you don't want to come. Don't be sorry. I'm just asking." Colin nodded, smiled politely, and said, "It's not that I don't want to come, it's just that I've advanced not long ago and I have nothing to share. So I won't go." This is of course an excuse. The real reason is that he doesn't like to socialize. And with the golden paper around, he didn't need others to share his experiences or insights. Regina nodded, her expression unchanged, but she felt relieved. It's not that she looks down on Colin, it's just that from the day they advanced, they were divided into two circles. She had more contact with Colin and knew more about him, so she wouldn't have any other feelings. But her companions who had been staying on the mountain with wizards leading patrols might not think so. Apprentices who stay on the mountain tend to look down on those assigned to the mountain. After all, if it hadn't been for the establishment of the inspection office, these two groups of people might not have seen each other more than once in their lives. "I don't know when the reward from the school will arrive." In order to ease the embarrassment, Regina spoke again. Although Colin accidentally exposed the cultist before, he still had merit, and the school should be rewarded. I don't know, maybe it's just these 2 days. After all, it's been a month. The two chatted for a while, then began to concentrate on studying witchcraft. Time flies. When the sun becomes as rich as golden honey, the day's work comes to an end. Colin said goodbye to Regina, got into the carriage, and the two drove in opposite directions. When she got home, Renee had prepared a sumptuous dinner. While eating, Colin looked at the obedient Renee standing by and felt a little regretful. Not long ago, he tried to teach Renee to practice the most primitive solar breathing method. He bought this breathing method from a roadside stall. In addition to being cheap, another advantage is that it can be taught to others without restriction. It's a pity that Renee hasn't started yet, or in other words, hasn't started formal training yet. This is mainly because she has not received a good education and cannot even read. Although the family runs a bakery, the family is not considered poor. But apparently, this is not enough for them to afford a tutor. As for schools, there are no schools on the island at all. In addition, the knight's breathing technique seems simple, but as something that allows people to master extraordinary power, how simple can it be? So, this is not a simple solution that can be solved by learning to read. Renee still lacks a lot of things, and obviously it cannot be solved quickly within a month. Fortunately, the one I traveled through was a member of the Orthodox Wizard School. Colin sighed silently in his heart again. As for Arthur, his thinking is even more rigid and he can no longer change. Perhaps I should study some knowledge about life modification and directly give Renee and the others power. Colin also had this thought again. After dinner, Colin came to the basement as usual. Generally speaking, he usually practices breathing techniques and witchcraft in the basement, while meditation is performed in the meditation room in the master bedroom. But this time is a little different from the past. He took his gray money bag with him, pushed the door into the basement, and put the money bag on the wooden table aside. Colin began to practice witchcraft in turns, and streams of light kept flickering on him. In this way, time passed quietly, the moon was in the sky, and the night was deep. Colin finally stopped practicing. With a thought in his mind, he summoned the gold paper. Over the past month, he has never slacked off. With constant hard work from morning to night, the 3 witchcrafts of Hope's defensive force field, secondary high temperature tolerance, and fireball were already in use just now, but he pushed the progress to the limit. After taking the money bag and converting enough points to break the limit, he started to break the limit without any hesitation. Use your mind to focus on the symbol. Boom! As the golden light flickered, Colin closed his eyes involuntarily. It was like a clear spring had opened up in my mind, and knowledge kept pouring out like water. His brain was working rapidly, making his face turn slightly red. After an unknown amount of time, he opened his eyes and looked at the gold paper again. Name, Colin Leonard. Level, Intermediate Wizard Apprentice, 7 out of 100. Grand Knight, 80 out of 100. Meditation Method, Apprenticeship Circle Meditation Method I, 60/100. Solar Breathing Method 2, 10/100. Witchcraft, 0 level magic, slightly, 0 level wizardry. Steel Armor I, 34 out of 100. Arrow I, 38 out of 100. Secondary High Temperature Tolerance I, 0 out of 100. Hope Defense Force Field I, 0 out of 100. Fireball I, 0 out of 100. Detect Evil, 85 out of 100. Purify Evil Energy, 89 out of 100. Skill, Elementary Witchcraft Crystal Production, Bright Crystal Production Gold. Talent, Intermediate Strong Life, 99 out of 100. Break Limit Point, 0. This time to break the limit, the 3 witchcrafts cost a total of 3 limit breaking points, which is 3 magic stones. Since then, he still has 89 magic stones. Colin's eyes gradually moved downward. In the talent column, mid-level Strong Life is about to reach its limit. Maybe just today? His eyes moved slightly. After all, the progress of the intermediate level Strong Life has reached 99/100 as early as 5 days ago. Based on the previous growth rate, the time to reach the limit should be today. With this thought in mind, Colin did not bother to test the 3 witchcraft after breaking the limit, and immediately began to practice the solar breathing method. Time passes like water. After practicing the solar breathing method for the 3rd time, the progress of the intermediate talent on the gold paper gradually changed, reaching 100 out of 100, and the black symbol also gradually appeared behind it. Just like before, Colin couldn't wait to start converting the limit breaking points, while paying attention to the symbol behind the intermediate strong life on the gold paper. When a dazzling outline of light appears on the edge of the symbol, it means that the limit breaking point of transformation is enough to break the limit. 1, 2 magic stones are rapidly transformed into limit breaking points. But gradually, Colin's expression began to change. At this time, the number of converted limit breaking points has reached 40. But the symbol behind the intermediate strong life has not changed. It is still dim black. His movement of transforming the breaking point paused for a moment, then continued. Regardless of the witchcraft or breathing techniques that I have learned before, the cost of breaking the limit for the first time has never exceeded 10 points. The highest cost is 5 points for the circle meditation method. But after all, when the intermediate strong life appears on the gold paper, it is enveloped in a circle of purple light. As for other witchcraft and the like, only the second limit-breaking daylight breathing method is purple so far. Therefore, it is normal that more limit-breaking points are needed to break the limit for the first time. After a while, Colin suddenly stopped changing the limit-breaking point. Looking at the gold paper again, in the column of limit-breaking points at the bottom, the number of limit-breaking points has reached 81. But the symbol after the intermediate strong life has not changed at all. But there are only the last 8 magic stones left in his hand. Just as he didn't gamble when he first advanced the circle meditation method, he didn't plan to gamble this time either. What's more, judging by the color, the solar breathing method, which is also purple, cost a full 50 magic stones to break through the limit twice and become purple, but only spent 1 magic stone to break the limit once. If calculated according to the same increase rate, when the solar breathing method breaks the limit 3 times, the limit breaking point spent should be 2,500. In this way, even if the intermediate strong life is also purple, even if it does not use so much, there is a high probability that it will not be able to break the limit with 8 more limit breaking points. Perhaps I should return to my old business and accumulate magic stones. Putting away the remaining magic stones, Colin began to test some of the witchcraft that had just been broken. The first is Hope's defensive force field. After casting it, Colin picked up the bee's sting that had been reduced to a decoration and stabbed the other arm hard. Under the strong force, the slender blade of the bee needle bent quickly. After feeling it carefully, Colin retracted the bee needle. The defense power of Hope's defensive force field is at least doubled compared to before. This is an improvement in physical defense. On the mental level, I don't think it will be too different. As Colin retracted the sword, the extremely flexible blade instantly bounced back to a straight position, and the tip of the sword kept vibrating and making a buzzing sound. I have to say that bee needle is indeed a rare and good sword, but unfortunately, in his hands, it is just a decoration at best. By the time he is forced to use the bee sting will probably be useless. Next, test the fireball technique. Tongue. The fireball suddenly ignited in his hand, and the brightness of the flame turned Colin's complexion orange. Looking at the small basement, he hesitated and slightly lowered the intensity of the fireball technique. Then he shot at the ironclad wooden target in the distance. Boom! The moment it touched the wooden target, the orange fireball exploded suddenly, and the shock wave blew the wooden target down. The high temperature of the flame even made the iron piece on the chest of the wooden target turn slightly red. From this point of view, the complete power of the fireball technique after breaking the limit should be equivalent to the more powerful grenade in the previous life. Of course, this is just a rough comparison. After all, grenades rely more on shrapnel to kill enemies, while fireball relies on flames and shock waves. As for secondary high-temperature tolerance, Colin walked to the slightly red ironclad target that had been burned by the fireball technique. After the operation, he tried to touch it with his fingers. It was very hot, but there was no burning pain. His eyes flashed, and he took out a solid iron cone bullet from his pocket with a thought in his mind. The orange flames of the ignition technique appeared under the cone bomb and continued to heat. The color of the cone bomb was first dark red, then orange-red, and then became brighter and brighter, becoming orange-yellow. It was at this time that Colin felt a burning sensation in his hand, probably immune to temperatures below 800 to 900 degrees. Colin put the cone bomb aside to cool down and nodded with satisfaction. With a limit-breaking secondary high-temperature tolerance, Hope's defensive force field, steel armor, and blood armor, his current defense is undoubtedly the top level among senior wizard apprentices. Not to mention the life-saving talent of reaching the limit of intermediate life force. He could already imagine the despair of the enemy, who thought they could severely injure him after all their efforts to penetrate his defense, only to find that the wound healed instantly in the next second. On the other hand, the fireball technique has also exceeded its limit, and combined with the arrow technique, he is quite effective in attacking. Colin couldn't help but smile, and then thought to himself, my attack and defense are already pretty good, but my only shortcoming right now maybe is dodge. Thinking of this, he suddenly regretted converting a full 51 magic stones into limit-breaking points. Otherwise, you can go to the shopping mall tomorrow to see if you can find a suitable witchcraft. However, he then thought about it, and arrow shooting was originally just a general witchcraft. I still have 8 magic stones, maybe I can find a similar witchcraft, and then use gold paper to break the limit and improve it. Let's go see it tomorrow. He made a decision secretly. The dark tide surges. It was still daybreak. Colin stood quietly by the spacious balcony of the master bedroom, leaning on the railing and looking into the distance. Not long after, a bright golden light appeared on the line where the sea and the sky meet in the distance. The sea level was suddenly sprinkled with bits of gold. The undercurrent is therefore more obvious. Even though it was just a distant view, just looking at this scene, the smell of salty sea breeze seemed to reach the tip of his nose, and the sound of rushing tide echoed in his ears. Tuck, tuck, tuck. It was at this time that there was a gentle knock on the wooden door of the bedroom. Colin turned back to the house, opened the door, and walked out of the bedroom. Master. Renee greeted respectfully. What are you eating this morning? Colin asked casually as he walked towards the restaurant downstairs. It's the seafood porridge that my master taught me to make last time, with fried fish and fried mushrooms. Yeah, Colin nodded with satisfaction. Although Renee's talent in night training is terrible, her cooking skills are the complete opposite. Often just by listening to him talk about it once, he can do it almost exactly, and even doing it for the first time can be better than him doing it himself. You must know that he lived alone for several years in his previous life, except for entertainment. At work, the most important thing I do is to study cooking skills. Although I can't say how good it is, being surpassed once is enough to prove Renee's talent in cooking. Arriving at the restaurant on the first floor, a steaming bowl of seafood porridge was placed at the main seat of the long square dining table, which was large enough for 8 people. The fish and shrimp meat were clearly visible in it. It was definitely not like what I had eaten in my previous life. The picture is for reference only. There are 2 pan-fried fish steaks on the side, with mushrooms as a side dish. Go and ask Arthur to prepare the carriage. After sitting down, Colin ordered Renee. His daily routine is to go to bed at about 2 in the morning and get up at 6 in the morning. Logically speaking, a servant like Renee Arthur should go to bed later and wake up earlier than him. In fact, Renee did the same thing in the beginning, but this kind of work and rest time is just 1 or 2 days a day or a few days. If this continues for a long time, it will still be difficult for ordinary people to persevere. It is not easy for ordinary mortals to become slaves of extraordinary beings such as wizards. Tap, tap, tap. The black horse pulling the cart gradually slowed down and stopped slowly. Colin got off the carriage and came to the familiar wizard alley again. There were many shops selling witchcraft knowledge in the alleys, and Colin went straight to the most conspicuous and largest one. There is no signboard, only a red flag with gold patterns on the eaves, with the symbol of the rap school tattooed on it. In this store, you can not only buy witchcraft knowledge, but also sell witchcraft knowledge. Needless to say, this is obviously a shop opened by the school. There is also a similar shop outside the wizard's territory on the mountain. Apart from this, the school has not opened any stores. After all, the school doesn't rely on its stores to make money either. Opening a shop of witchcraft knowledge is just to collect more knowledge. The person guarding the shop is a junior wizard apprentice who is already quite old. At the beginning, if the new wizard seeds cannot reach the intermediate level within 10 years, they will not be directly expelled from the school. Instead, they will be assigned to do these chores. Unfortunately, Blackstone Island is not big, and the handyman positions offered by the lab school are even more limited. By the time Colin's batch arrives, or earlier, the positions will be full. If these apprentices cannot advance, they will have no choice but to leave the school. I wonder what you need, sir? Seeing Colin come in and catching a glimpse of the silver badge on his chest, the old wizard apprentice, who was at least 60 years old, stood up and came to greet him. I want to see auxiliary witchcraft related to dodge and speed. Okay, sir. Please wait a moment. After a while, the old wizard brought over a parchment catalog. Colin read carefully from the beginning. Mirror image creates a silent, still optical illusion to confuse enemies. A three-dimensional projector? It seems to be widely used, relatively practical, and has limit-breaking potential. Unknown, perhaps in the direction of more projections, larger projections from stillness to movement, or in the direction of real-time projection. Well, it's unlikely that an optical projection can finally break through the limit and become a clone. Not bad, included in the list of options. The price, 50 magic stones? Colin couldn't help but pause, touched his shriveled purse, and continued to look down. But this time he chose to look at the price first. Frog leap technique, 35 magic stones. Apply oil to the soles of your feet, 42 magic stones. 36 magic stones. Quickly scanning the witchcraft related to dodge and speed recorded in the catalog on one side, Colin's expression became worse and worse. Maybe the store of the school only contains high-quality products, but no matter what, the cheapest one here starts with at least 10 magic stones. He also saw several people who were excited, but unfortunately, they were short of money. Next, he went to other shops selling witchcraft knowledge, but in general, he was satisfied with the ones he could not afford, and the ones he could afford were not satisfied. However, he was not without gains. Anyway, here we are. Although he didn't buy any witchcraft, he learned about all the witchcraft about dodge and speed sold here, which can be regarded as increasing his knowledge. The witchcraft you like already has a target, and you can come and buy it directly as soon as you save enough money. When I walked out of the last store, it was already past 11 o'clock in the morning. Colin turned and walked towards a shop selling witchcraft materials. After a while, he walked out with 120 pure crystals, returned to the carriage, and headed back home. These pure crystals cost him 4 magic stones in total. The bright crystal made from pure crystal is of better quality than miscellaneous crystal. It can usually be charged 60 times, and the single illumination time is about 6 hours. If you buy one, it will last you 2 months. If you save a little, it will last 3 or 4 months. The price is naturally more expensive than bright crystals made from mixed crystals, and 1 magic stone can only buy 10. Therefore, after all these pure crystals are made into bright crystals, he can earn about 8 magic stones. According to the production of bright crystals that he has now upgraded to gold, he will need about 2 days to make 120 pure crystals. This is equivalent to an income of 4 magic stones per day, which is quite considerable on the island. At least it was much higher than the monthly salary of 10 magic stones in his patrol office. It's a pity, compared to the hundreds or even thousands of limit-breaking points required for mid-level life strengthening, this kind of money-making efficiency is still too low. Perhaps it's time to try to find some other ways to make money. Colin sat in the carriage and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He lifted the curtain of the round window of the carriage and looked out. At this time, he had driven to the west area of the city. The buildings on the roadside had become more plain to the naked eye, but there were still exquisite and luxurious houses, such as the rich street he was passing now. Most of the houses here are single-family courtyards. Outside these mansions, Colin noticed that not far in front, there were luxurious carriages parked outside a residence whose walls were covered with green vines. There are so many carriages at the door. This seems to be Regina's home. It should be the party she was talking about yesterday. Colin remembered. Unexpectedly, the party would be held at Regina's home. Speaking of which, Regina is really talented. It only took her 4 years to go from beginner to intermediate, and a large part of that time was spent learning various basic knowledge. And now it's even more exaggerated. In just 6 years, he has already started preparing to advance to a senior apprenticeship. It seems that I broke through the circle meditation method once, and soon I will reach the limit again. Colin rubbed the bag containing pure crystals on his right hand and thought of it inexplicably. After a while, the carriage drove him to the door of Regina's house. For a moment, under the keen hearing, the sound of barbecue fat, the clinking of knives and forks, people's conversations, jokes, various sounds continued to reach my ears. Without going in to see with his own eyes, just based on these sounds, he could imagine that it must be an extremely lively scene inside. Putting down his hand, the curtain fell again under the influence of gravity. Colin looked calm and allowed the carriage to take him away. Those lively sounds gradually disappeared as the distance increased. 2 days passed in a flash. Today is already Friday, and it's Colin's night shift again. But before the night watch, he had to do one thing first. That is to take the bright crystals made in the past 2 days to the Wizard Alley in the center of the city and sell them. During these 2 days, he also researched the production of witchcraft crystals, hoping to find more profitable types of witchcraft crystals. For witchcraft crystals that perform magic tricks, such as the light spell, only the material cost is counted, and if labor is not included, the net profit is mostly similar to that of the light crystal. But because it is not as commonly used as bright crystal, it is also more difficult to sell. Apart from these tricks, the selling price of higher-level witchcraft crystals will be higher because the raw materials have not changed. If the production difficulty is the same, the profit should be higher. However, if he wants to make other witchcraft crystals, he needs to purchase the corresponding production books first. These crafting books are not cheap either. Each book requires at least 10 magic stones. Moreover, it is also necessary to practice until the limit is exceeded in order to ensure the success rate, and then pursue efficiency. This all requires magic stones and time. After breakfast, Colin ordered Arthur to prepare the carriage, just like last time. But as soon as he reached the door, an unexpected surprise came suddenly. Lord Colin, the silver-armored guard greeted in a deep voice. This is the reward given to you by the school. The guard respectfully handed over a wooden box with the triangular logo of the school engraved on it with both hands. Colin suddenly realized that this should be his reward for helping expose the cultist. I don't know what knowledge will be inside. Witchcraft? He took the wooden box with some anticipation. After he accepted it, the guard excused himself and left, and he got on the carriage and drove towards the center of the city while opening the wooden box. It's not knowledge, nor is it the evasive auxiliary magic he expected. After opening it, all that came into view were 50 neatly stacked magic stones. This school of thought is really simple and unpretentious. A smile appeared on Colin's lips. Although this magic stone is conventional and not a more valuable witchcraft secret, it is still a gratifying reward. After all, who would mind having too much money? Moreover, with these 50 magic stones, he could just buy the witchcraft he was optimistic about last time. In addition, the magic stones earned from selling the bright crystal this time should be enough for him to buy another witchcraft crystal-making book. This way, we could save a lot of time. Colin put the magic stone into his purse. Then it suddenly occurred to me. A month has passed. I don't know if the Lap wizard has found any clues from the last corpse, or if the cult behind it has been uprooted. But then he thought again. It stands to reason that if clues to the cult are found from that corpse, and if the cult is to be encircled and suppressed, the inspection and processing office should be the main force. But as a member of the inspection office, I have never heard any news. This is either because the cult is too cunning and even Wizard Lapu has not gotten any clues, or because Wizard Lapu and others are still conducting secret investigations and are just waiting to fully understand the situation of the cult before taking a thunderous strike. But no matter what it was something he couldn't worry about. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. After a while, he arrived at a shop specializing in witchcraft crystals. The red flag at the door means that this is the property of the Chiwen gang. Colin stepped inside. "Sir, welcome. What would you like to order?" The shop owner is a plump, fat man with a kind face. "I'm here to sell witchcraft crystals. Here are 60 bright crystals." Colin took out the bright crystal that had been packed long ago and put it on the table. He deliberately sold only half of the bright crystals. This is to avoid exposing your unusual production efficiency. For ordinary intermediate apprentices, the number of bright crystals they can make with pure crystals in a day usually ranges from 10 to 30. This is mainly related to success rate. If the condition is good and the proficiency is high enough, the success rate of ordinary intermediate apprentices in making bright crystals can reach 100%. But in any case, the number of witchcraft crystals produced every day, around 30, is already the limit for ordinary intermediate apprentices. But he doubled that amount. If someone investigates the number of crystals he buys, it is easy to deduce that not only can he make 60 bright crystals every day, but his success rate is also 100%. If there are only 1 or 2 more coins, it may not be a big deal, but the difference is double, and anyone with a discerning eye can see the abnormality. As for changing to a few more stores selling bright crystals, the Wizard Alley on the island is only so big, and the gangs are well informed. No matter how he changes, it will be easy to notice his abnormality. Although he is a member of the rap school, most people dare not take his idea. The efficiency of making bright crystal is not a big deal. But these are risks, and the risk of gold paper may be exposed, and it can be avoided with just a little attention. Why wouldn't he do it? What's more, he had no losses. Soon, the caravan will arrive. At that time, if he sells all the bright crystals he has accumulated to the caravan, there will be no impact at all. After appraising the bright crystal, the shop owner neatly took out 6 magic stones and handed them to Colin. Colin accepted it, turned, and walked towards the door. But when he reached the door, he paused for a moment and turned back to ask the boss, "If I sell bright crystals every day, can you keep it here for a long time? What's the approximate number per day?" "Sir, fixed 30 pieces per day." The shop owner looked embarrassed when he heard this. For bright crystals, they have their own supply channels. It is okay to buy bright crystals that are sold in bulk once in a while, but if it is a long-term purchase, he cannot make the decision. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, but after seeing the silver triangle badge on Colin's chest, he hesitated and changed his words. "Sir, I can't make the decision on this matter. Please wait a moment." After saying that, he walked to the back of the store. It should be time to use the communication witchcraft formation to contact the person who can make the decision. Colin's face darkened, inexplicably thinking of his previous experience in the wizarding territory, where he was refused by the shop owner to purchase bright crystals. After a while, the store owner came out again. At this time, he had a friendly smile on his face, and Colin was relieved when he saw this. "It seems like it's done." What the store owner said next confirmed his guess, and he no longer had to worry about the sales of bright crystals. After the matter was settled, Colin walked out of the store with a relaxed look. "I fought hard to stay in the school, and it was really worth it." Until now, he is still enjoying the privileges and status brought to him by the school. Touching the money bag that had become bulging again due to the sale of witchcraft crystals and school rewards, he couldn't wait to turn around and walk towards the shop opened by the school to sell witchcraft. Just a moment later, he came out holding a witchcraft book. If you look closely, you can vaguely see the 3 characters Swift Technique written on the yellow cover. Then, he bought a new witchcraft crystal production book, and he had already chosen the type, Photo Crystal. These 2, whether it is the agility technique or the production of image crystals, he carefully compared and selected them. It cost him a total of 55 magic stones. Among them, the Swiftness spell has 40 magic stones, and the Shadow Crystal Production Book has 15 magic stones. Since then, his economic status has returned to before liberation, with only 5 magic stones left. After buying the photo crystal, Colin was ready to return to his house. But when he boarded the carriage, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure flashing past his sight. He turned his head subconsciously, but only saw half a figure turning into the alleyway. "It seems Haywood?" Colin frowned slightly, a little unsure. But in an instant, he put the matter behind him. Although Black Rock City is not big, it is just a small city, but it still has a population of hundreds of thousands. It is not easy to meet an acquaintance, and it is more likely to be just a similar figure. Huh? The stone slab underfoot has become smooth and flat due to long-term walking, and there are rough and convex stone walls on both sides. Due to moisture, cyan color tenaciously crawls out of the zigzag gaps and adheres to the surface of the stone wall. Haywood's face was dull, and his steps were steady and regular. He walked forward step by step, and his footsteps echoed in the corridor. There was no light in the long tunnel leading underground, and the only illumination was the bright crystal in his hand that was emitting soft light. Not long after, he came to the end. This is a wooden door, an ordinary wooden door with a solid color, nothing special about it. Stopping at the door, Haywood waited quietly. He knew that the sound of his arrival footsteps could not be concealed from Lord Harrington inside. Besides, even if there were no footsteps, the adult could still feel his arrival. "Come in." He didn't have to wait long. Just for a moment, Harrington's calm voice came from inside. Haywood opened the door and entered. A small secret room came into view. He was slightly startled. At this time, the secret room was not as good as before, and Harrington was the only one. Opposite Harrington, there was a man dressed as an aristocrat standing. But he didn't ask anything, and there was no room for him to speak here. Haywood stood aside quietly, standing silently like a sculpture. "Go on," Harrington said. Bowen, who was dressed as an aristocrat, glanced at Haywood and no longer cared about it, continuing to talk about the topic just now. "Harrington, the day when our Lord comes is not far away. Are you ready?" His tone was a bit tough and a bit rude. "Oh, I'm more worried about you than me. I heard that the inspection office just caught a small bug not long ago. There's nothing wrong with your ceremony, right?" Harrington's expression remained unchanged, and his tone was soothing but equally tough. When dealing with this group of cult lunatics, the worst thing to do is show your cowardice. "Snort." Bowen snorted coldly and said lightly, "There is no need for you to worry. Our Lord's return is unstoppable. You better come up with some results quickly. Bishop Amon is not as good-tempered as me. If some time passes, there will still be no progress. Then our agreement can only be voided." After saying that, Bowen turned and left through one of the secret doors on the other side. Harrington watched quietly as the secret door closed, stroking a black scepter with dark gold lines in his hand. "Hope, these lunatics aren't talking big words. As an official wizard at the peak of the first level, Rap is not that easy to deal with. Although the Lord of Flesh and Thorns is strong, he still has some power to come to this world. And because of this, he needs my power." "Ah!" He waved his staff and unleashed purifying evil energy. The wave of witchcraft, which was far more powerful than the apprenticeship, blew through the entire dark room like a breeze. He would do this once every time after dealing with these cultists. This is a necessary measure. It is obviously not possible to seek skin from a tiger without caution. After doing this, he reached out and turned the mechanism on the wall behind him. There was just a click, and a groove the size of a fist was revealed on the originally tight wall behind him. Lift the scepter, insert it into the groove, and activate the magic power. The bluestone wall suddenly glowed slightly, undulating like water. Harrington took off his scepter and walked in. His figure disappeared into the bluestone wall, followed by Haywood. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In the quiet basement, the bright crystal emits soft light. Colin, who was standing in the middle, had a look on his face and used the swiftness technique. In an instant, he felt as if he was wrapped in the invisible wind. Whether he was waving or taking steps, he obviously felt a little faster than before. After some attempts, Colin showed a satisfied smile. Speed in combat. In his opinion, it is mainly divided into two parts. One is the speed of its own movement. The other is reaction speed. The two complement each other in battle, achieve each other's success, and both are indispensable. Swiftness, currently, seems to increase the speed of one's own movement. He made Colin even faster as a great knight. This faster speed is reflected in all aspects. Take the test just now, for example. It only takes 3 seconds for him to run around the basement. The perimeter of the basement is about 50 to 60 meters. In other words, at this speed, the time it takes him to run 100 meters is probably between 5 and 6 seconds. This is still a rough estimate. After all, he didn't sprint in a straight line in the basement. Moreover, thanks to the abundant energy brought by solar breathing, he can persist at this speed for at least an hour. This is only the running speed. Other speeds, such as vertical leap and retreat, have also been enhanced. This is just the initial state of swiftness. After the limit is broken, the improvement will be even greater. Of course, physical speed alone is not enough. This is also the weakness of the swiftness technique. No matter how fast the body is, if it cannot react when faced with an attack, it will still be useless. But it just so happens that the second limit-breaking solar breathing method improves reaction speed, although he has not yet advanced to the ultimate Great Knight. But after advancing to the ultimate Great Knight, the reaction speed will be improved, coupled with the increase in body speed. It can be said that based on these alone, the slow fireballs or acid spells used by those wizards would not even be able to hit him. Even if it hits, he still has heavy defenses. Even if his defense is breached, he still has an intermediate level of strength. Colin's faint witchcraft aura dissipated from his body, and his heart was surrounded by a strong sense of security. Wiping off the sweat from the exercise, he walked out of the basement and returned to the bedroom. By this time, Renee should have prepared the bath water. He thought as he climbed the stairs. But when he opened the bedroom door, he saw Renee kneeling on the ground, wiping the floor with a rag. The black and white girl's outfit outlines her youthful but still slim figure. Grown-ups! Hearing the sound of the door opening, Renee's body trembled suddenly. She quickly stood up, held the rag, and lowered her head in greeting. Colin glanced at it and knew what was going on. "Did you accidentally spill the hot water in the shower again?" "Yes, my lord. Please punish me," Renee replied in a low voice. Colin also keenly noticed that the girl's right arm was already red, which should be traces of being burned by hot water. He looked up into the bathroom again, where the tub was filled with hot water. Without much speculation, he could figure out that Renee must have insisted on filling up the hot water first after scalding herself. "Be careful next time." "Yes, my lord." Colin entered the bathroom and started taking a bath. This is not the first time something like this has happened. Fortunately, the hot water brought was not very hot, and there were no serious consequences. However, it's time to deal with it. I don't know what happened to the matter of asking Luke. The next day morning, not long after breakfast, a handsome wizard with an ageless appearance came to visit. It was the Luke that Colin had been thinking about last night. "Colin." Luke walked into the yard with a smile and handed Colin a thick book. "I believe this transformation technique will not disappoint you." His body is thin, but when he walks, he feels as heavy as fine iron. Luke was one of the people who was present with the photo crystal to record the duel between Colin and Barney. He was a familiar person. Later, because they were also on duty on Friday, the two of them became familiar with each other. Luke happens to be a wizard who specializes in life transformation, so Colin asked him to help him find a transformation technique suitable for ordinary people. "Then I'll wait and see." Colin replied with the same smile and led him to the reception room on the second floor. The two sat down on the beige sofa facing each other by the window, with a small carved round table in the middle. After sitting down, Renee brought 2 cups of black tea. Luke looked around Renee and said, "Colin, your maid looks a little too thin. She does need to be strengthened, but are you really not going to listen to my advice?" He curled his lips. There is really no use in maintaining a human appearance other than looking good. The human body has extreme. Renee's face gradually turned pale. "I have no plans to change my mind for the time being." Colin shook his head. Luke isn't talking about something as simple as growing animal ears, more scales, or having a tail. He was referring to the transformation of people into unrecognizable flesh and blood machines. Luke sighed regretfully. Renee on the side breathed a sigh of relief. He picked up the teacup, took a sip, and said, "Did you know that Regina returned to the wizarding realm to advance?" Colin nodded and took a sip of the black tea. "It's amazing." Luke couldn't help but sigh, looking a little lonely, and then asked curiously, "Did you go to the party at Regina's house a few days ago?" "No." Colin shook his head, put down the black tea, and watched as the teacup touched the table lightly, causing ripples in the red tea. Didn't you even get an invitation? Luke was a little surprised and sighed. Among us, you and Regina have the best relationship, but you didn't even get an invitation? As expected, the people on the mountain have always. He looks down on Yamashita. Colin did not explain that Regina actually invited him, but just asked in confusion, "Are we a group of people?" "We are a group of untalented apprentices from the mountains," Luke explained with a sigh. "Colin, it took you 10 years to barely advance to the intermediate wizard apprenticeship." He raised his head and smiled at Colin, "And it took me 9 years. We are all the same. Maybe after 40 or 50 years, we will be lucky enough to advance to the advanced apprentice level. But the greater possibility is that we are afraid of those dirty words and fear of alienation and degradation, and we will stop at the intermediate level. After all, even if we can advance at a higher level, as long as you don't become an official wizard, your lifespan will not increase, and there will be a lot more costs." Colin calmly picked up the black tea and took another sip, remaining silent. Luke didn't pay attention and continued. "Intermediate apprentices only have a lifespan of 120 years at most. Even if you are a great knight, your lifespan is only 150 years at most. Life is so short. It is only right to make more friends and enjoy more. Tomorrow, a few friends and I, all apprentices at the foot of the mountain, will have a party together. Are you interested in coming?" Colin picked up the thick book on the table, shook his head, and declined politely. "I can't wait to study this transformation technique that you said will not let me down. Let's talk about the party next time." Luke was startled for a moment, but he quickly continued to smile and said, "Okay, but I must come next time I'm free." Then he said with profound meaning, "Apprentices like us are just scattered sand individually. However, if we move around frequently and stay in contact, we can become someone who cannot be underestimated." The two exchanged polite greetings for a while, and then Luke took the initiative to get up and leave. After saying goodbye to Luke, Colin returned to the master bedroom and went to the balcony. Leaning against the railing, he watched Luke's carriage gradually go away, but he felt somewhat vigilant in his heart. Wizards are not nobles, and gatherings are rare. He has been in Black Rock City for so long, and only now has he heard of these two gatherings. And the two gatherings were so close together. Are there two different groups of people on the mountain and down the mountain? The breeze blew and disturbed Colin's broken hair on his forehead, and he looked incomprehensible. He didn't want to be tainted by such a whirlpool and such trivial matters. Time flies by like this. A month later, Palm Street. It was mid-morning, and the bright summer sunshine made me feel happy. Colin was sitting under the awning of the balcony on the second floor, enjoying morning tea. Renee came up with the freshly made snacks. She came to Colin and placed the silver tray on the black carved round iron table. Colin took a sip of black tea with milk and looked up at Renee. Renee was still wearing a black and white maid outfit. Her appearance had not changed much. She was still delicate and beautiful. Perhaps the only thing that can be called special is the light red lines on the collarbone. For the sake of beauty, Colin also specially painted the pattern into a rose shape. Now it seems that he made the right choice. It is this light red pattern that gives Renee a physical quality that is between an intermediate knight and a high-level knight. Although I can't say how strong it is enough for Renee. At least now, when carrying hot water, it never spills on the ground like before. The breeze blows, and the sea view in the distance is beautiful. Colin sat quietly on the balcony, enjoying the short morning tea time. After a while, just as he was about to get up and return to the basement to continue practicing, a familiar carriage suddenly appeared in his field of vision. The big maroon horse and the beige carriage are decorated with gilded patterns. It's Regina's carriage. Colin recognized it. Could it be that Regina has successfully advanced and become a senior apprentice? He secretly speculated, if you really advance, according to the school's regulations, if you see her again, maybe you should call her Sir. Colin felt an inexplicable sense of urgency in his heart. He withdrew his gaze and hurried to the basement. After reaching the ground, he breathed out the golden paper. The pale golden particles gathered together, and a piece of gold paper that was between illusion and reality gradually appeared in front of him. Name, Colin Leonard. Level: Intermediate Wizard Apprentice, 10 out of 100. Grand Knight, 99 out of 100. Meditation Method: Apprenticeship Circle Meditation Method I, 81/100. Solar Breathing Method 2, 20/100. Witchcraft, 0 level magic. Slightly, 0 level wizardry. Steel Armor I, 54 out of 100. Arrow I, 58 out of 100. Secondary High Temperature Tolerance I, 19 out of 100. Hope Defense Force Field I, 21 out of 100. Fireball I, 16 out of 100. Detect Evil, 96 out of 100. Purify Evil Energy, 97 out of 100. Swiftness, 31 out of 100. Skills: Elementary Witchcraft Crystal Production, Bright Crystal Production Gold, Shadow Crystal Production, 94 out of 100. Blood Pattern Transformation, 67 out of 100. Talent: Intermediate Strength, 100/100. Break Limit Point, 81. Read it carefully from top to bottom. Colin also has a clear understanding of his current situation. The first and most eye-catching thing is the night level progress. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, in short today and tomorrow, I will definitely be able to advance to the ultimate night. Then, there are the only two witchcrafts that have no limit: detecting evil and purifying evil energy and making image crystals. If you put all your energy into these three items, you should be able to reach your limit today and tomorrow. And now my current magic stones have been accumulated to 65 magic stones, and I still have 81 points to break the limit. He has everything. All he needs is Dongfeng, and he will be able to improve again soon. But before that, he had to go to a place first. That is the seaside to the east of the city. Because, according to the school of thought, the caravan he has longed for will arrive at Blackstone Island around this afternoon. After sorting out his situation, Colin was not in a hurry to go to the east of the city. After all, it was only the morning. He went upstairs and called little Demi and Renee down to the basement. Relax. Colin asked Demi to sit on the soft stool, took out a special long metal pen, and prepared to give her a blood pattern transformation as well. This is not a generous act of kindness, nor is it idleness. The full name of the transformation technique obtained from Luke is called blood pattern transformation technique. The principle is to forcibly enhance the blood of the subject through the blood pattern, and finally condense a secondary life seed, allowing the subject to gain physical fitness between the intermediate night and the advanced night. This kind of secondary life seed is different from the normal life seed that naturally condenses after the night's practice to become advanced nights. It cannot continue to improve through its own practice. In other words, the upper limit of the recipients is locked between intermediate nights and high-level nights, which is why its value is not high. After all, there are many intermediate nights and even high-level nights in this world. Any guard in the city is a junior knight, and the captain is at least a senior knight. Even like the city guards in those places in the west of the city, the captains are even great knights. The strength of a knight always comes from the body, and the human body has its limits. How can human flesh and blood compete with extraordinary witchcraft? Regardless of the witchcraft that specifically restrains knights, such as psychic shock, take Colin's current arrow shooting technique as an example. Even if the knight hits a few times, he can only be punished on the spot. Only a great knight can make a wizard take a high look, and only a great knight can extend his life to 150 years. But as a great knight, Colin has never heard of a transformation technique that can directly transform ordinary people into great knights. However, what matters most to him is the blood pattern transformation technique's ability to improve vitality. Blood is the source of the knight's power and the condensed vitality. And it just so happens that the root of his talent, intermediate strength, is also his vitality. If he could rely on gold paper to break the limits of the blood pattern transformation technique, maybe it would bring him unexpected surprises. But if you want to break the limit, you first need to practice it to the limit. Now, after a month of continuous practice, Colin has improved it to 67 out of 100. Apart from Arthur and Renee, the training objects were mostly animals like hares. Under the influence of gold paper, although practicing with animals such as hares can make progress, it is not much. Half of the progress he had accumulated over the past month was obtained through transformation for Arthur and Renee. Arthur was the first to modify it. At that time, he had just improved the progress to 25 to 100. After the modification, it became 40 of 100. After that, he transformed Renee. Perhaps it was because Renee's blood pattern was not as random as Arthur's, but rather in a rose-shaped shape. In short, the progress of the blood pattern transformation technique was directly increased to 59/100. In order to improve the progress as quickly as possible, he planned to transform Demi as well from the beginning. But after all, Demi is just a kid. To be on the safe side, he continued to practice with the hair for a while. Until the progress reached 67/100 and he felt confident, he started to modify it. Don't be afraid. Sister is right next to you. Renee held Demi's little hand and comforted her gently. Sister, I'm not afraid. Demi sat on the soft stool and looked up at Renee, standing on the left with a serious look on her face. She thought for a while and asked, after Demi's transformation, will she be able to become like her sister? Is it serious? Yes. You will become so powerful that you can lift such a big stone. Renee opened her hands and described it exaggeratedly. Well, it's not an exaggeration, but due to Demi's age, it may take a few years to achieve such strength. Yes. Demi nodded heavily, her soft blonde hair rippling, turned to look at Colin and urged, Master, give Demi a makeover quickly. Demi also wants to become as strong as her sister. Renee also had expectations in her eyes. It's not that she doesn't know the limitations of the blood pattern transformation technique, but for them, even such extraordinary power is extremely precious. Colin looked calm as he picked up the special metal pen and started to modify it. But before the transformation, he paused and asked again, Demi, what kind of pattern do you want? Demi bit her finger and thought for a while before finally deciding. I want a little bear. Is that okay, Master? It looks like my favorite little bear. Okay. Colin picked up the long pen and began to modify it. After more than an hour, the transformation was completed. Demi got her wish and got a tattoo of a red bear. Because the bear was slightly larger, its location was different from Renee's collarbone, and it was on the left shoulder blade of her back. The blood pattern transformation technique does not have too strict requirements on the burning location. As long as it is not the limbs and head, any other location is fine. After transforming Demi, she fell into a deep sleep. In the next period of time, her food intake will increase greatly until the seeds of life are condensed. After Colin ordered Renee to take Demi to rest, he opened the gold paper. At this time, the progress of the blood pattern transformation technique has reached 89/100, a full 22 points increase. Transforming Arthur increases by 15 points, transforming Renee by 19 points, and transforming Demi by 22 points. He couldn't help but think about it. They are all the same modifications, with the latter one being more improved than the previous ones. Obviously, because the blood patterns burned later are more complex. It seems that it just changes the shape of the blood pattern, but it is not as simple as imagined. It involves more complex designs of energy circuits. In this case, Colin's eyes flashed, and a guess emerged in his mind. Could it be that the complexity of the exercises affects the rate of progress? As mentioned before, the Witchcraft Codex provides a standard template. When I first started practicing, since I was new to witchcraft, I followed this template to cast spells. Later, when the progress increases and the mastery of witchcraft becomes more and more proficient, only then can one break out of the template. However, for Colin, apart from the simulation test battles, he would try various changes and uses of witchcraft. When practicing, he most often uses the standard template from the beginning. After all, the exercises recognized by Jinji require full strength. Of course, while meeting complex changes, nature can also go all out. But it is undoubtedly more troublesome. This is equivalent to having to punch with all your strength on one side and making a few fancy turns with your arms on the other side. Although it is not impossible to do it, it is undoubtedly much more difficult. This also resulted in his usual practice, still focusing on casting standard templates. Does exercise complexity really contribute to progress? In order to verify this idea, Colin raised his right hand with a thought. Call! A ball of fire suddenly appeared in his palm. After hovering for a moment, it suddenly shot towards the ironwood target not far away. Aha! But what was different this time was that the fireball did not explode when it came into contact with the ironwood target. Instead, it spread rapidly from the point of contact like a breeze, wrapping around the ironwood target and turning it into a huge torch. The orange light emitted lit up the entire basement. He practiced this repeatedly until noon, when Colin looked at the gold paper again. Before practicing, he confirmed the progress of a limit-breaking fireball technique, which was 16 out of 100. And at this moment, if he saw it correctly, the last advancement of the limit-breaking fireball technique on the gold paper has become 17 out of 100. Increasing the complexity of your exercises really works. Colin couldn't help but feel joy on his face, but then he frowned slightly. Under complex exercises, progress improves faster. But more complex exercises will take more time and effort than mechanical exercises. However, generally speaking, the overall efficiency of complex exercises is still more efficient than mechanized exercises. He looked at the rows of characters on the gold paper and felt excited. It seems that the speed of my advancement can be improved a lot. The high sun emits warm light. It was already afternoon. After lunch, Colin took a carriage and rushed towards the seaside east of the city. Now it's almost there. The salty sea breeze passes through the round window of the carriage and blows the curtains, bringing a touch of coolness inside. Colin lifted the curtain and looked into the distance. A touching sparkling blue is the first thing that catches the eye. This is the docking port of the entire island. It is crescent-shaped as a whole. On top of it, several wooden piers of different lengths extend from the golden beach. On the sea level at the end of the pier, white seabirds are circling regularly and chirping from time to time. The sun casts bright spots on the azure sea level. As the sun sets in dusk and the sun rises brilliantly, these bright spots will become more conspicuous, like bright gold foil on sapphires. The carriage stopped at the beach and Colin got out. At this time, a lot of people have gathered here. Most of them are wizards, and the remaining small number are also their followers. This group of people seems to be gathered together, but in fact they are distinct and divided into different circles. It was easy for Colin to find the circle that belonged to the school and the inspection department. In order to avoid appearing too out of the ordinary, he entered the circle of academic circles. "Colin, are you here too?" As soon as he approached, someone said hello to him. Looking around, it was Luke, who was standing with several wizards from the patrol office. "Yes, after all, this is the first time we can actually welcome the caravan, so come earlier." Colin replied. The caravan will pass through Blackstone Island about once every 6 months. But before, perhaps because of lack of money, or perhaps because of the pride that came from nowhere, the original owner had never really come into contact with the caravan and only looked at it from a distance every time. The school's logistics people are also here. According to them, the caravan will arrive here at about 4 p.m., Luke continued to reveal to Colin. This time is known from the tokens left by the caravan. "Is it 4 o'clock?" Colin nodded. "It's already past 3 o'clock, and it seems we can't wait too long. Call." At this moment, a beige carriage suddenly arrived. Just by looking at the familiar maroon horse and the beige gilded carriage, Colin knew who was coming. Regina stepped out of the carriage. His face was not as gentle as before, slightly indifferent, and his face was also inexplicably pale. The black cat named Maggie, who was always with her, was nowhere to be seen. Lady Regina. Luke on the side took the first step forward and greeted respectfully. It was also at this time that Colin saw a triangular badge pinned to the chest of Regina's black witch robe. It was brilliant gold. Lady Regina. Under the leadership of Luke, the crowd gathered in the school bowed their heads and greeted respectfully. Colin naturally followed the crowd and greeted them together. Regina looked cold and didn't respond at all. There must be something wrong with the advancement. Even Maggie is missing. Colin looked at her slightly pale face and couldn't help but guess. Advancement to senior apprentice means that the mental fog has been completely lifted. The dirty words floating in the world will have direct contact with the spirit, distort knowledge, and bring various costs. Only by maintaining humanity and a thorough understanding of knowledge can these costs be mitigated or even eliminated. Therefore, advancing to an advanced apprenticeship does not mean simply accumulating enough magic power to advance. You also usually need to make sure you understand the meditation method well enough. But for ordinary wizards, it is difficult to quantify the degree of knowledge they have, and it is difficult to ensure that they have a thorough understanding of all aspects of knowledge. Just like you can cook, but it is difficult for you to accurately measure whether you know everything about cooking, and it is even harder to ensure that you have a thorough understanding of all aspects of cooking. This is why the later you get, the less emphasis is placed on the magic affinity qualifications of wizards, and why wizards from schools are said to have better talents than wild wizards. The talent of a wizard has never been simply the affinity for magic energy. This is only half of it. The other half of the wizard's talent is always the ability to learn knowledge. Speaking of which, the progress of the circle meditation method has reached 81/100. Maybe it will be broken again soon. By then, I will not be far from the realm of a high-level wizard. Colin's eyes flickered. Unlike other people, I have gold paper and can intuitively recognize the progress of current knowledge mastery, whether I have fully mastered it, and whether I have reached the limit. In this case, maybe I can follow the tips of the gold paper and choose to break through when the meditation method reaches its limit. That is, when I have a complete understanding of it. This may be able to avoid the price. Thinking of this, Colin suddenly thought, what should I pay attention to when advancing to become a formal wizard? He tried hard to search for memories, but there was no memory of this aspect in his mind. The teachers of the school have not taught relevant knowledge. Perhaps because they are only senior wizard apprentices? Although he is still far away from becoming a formal wizard, there are always too many things to prepare for a rainy day. It stands to reason that as a member of the school, he should go to a peak apprentice like Berkeley, or even go directly to the lap wizard to obtain relevant knowledge. But his improvement speed is too fast, and it is not appropriate to leave the school so early. The wizards in this world are not seekers who only pursue the truth. Here, the first rule that wizards learn is, don't pursue knowledge excessively. There is only one principle that can be paralleled: stay human. In this world, what most wizards pursue is only strength and longevity, or, like him, seeking peace of mind and the power to control their own destiny. But according to your own progress, you may need this knowledge in less than a few years. But you can break through from a junior to a formal wizard in a few years. Colin sighed silently in his heart. He raised his head, looked at the vast sea, and squinted his eyes slightly. Perhaps this knowledge can be found in the caravan. Time passed slowly, and with the arrival of Regina, many senior wizard apprentices from the school also arrived one after another. Another moment passed. In the sea area on the right, more than a dozen black spots gradually appeared, and the shadows of more than a dozen gray-black ships could be vaguely distinguished. Not long after, as if in the blink of an eye, those gray-black boat silhouettes came closer. It was at this time that Colin was shocked to see the size of these ships. The ships were an entire fleet, consisting of the 3 largest main ships and 12 slightly smaller ships. According to visual inspection, the largest main ship is at least 20 to 30 meters wide and more than 100 meters long. Other slightly smaller ships are also more than 10 meters wide and 60 or 70 meters long. And it looks like it should be an ironclad ship that combines witchcraft and steam, not a wooden ship, although it is not as good as the ocean-going cargo ships that were several hundred meters long in the previous life. When these behemoths appear in front of you, you will still be a little intimidated. Woo! The huge ship's whistle roars. The sound was long and loud, covering up the small chatter of the wizards, and also firmly attracted their eyes. Looking at the fleet gradually stopping, for some reason, Colin suddenly felt a sense of expectation in his heart. The giant ship slowly docked at the eastern port of the city, thanks to the fact that the pier is deep enough into the ocean. Otherwise, if you want to board these giant ships, you may have to take another small boat. Whoosh! Just as Colin was silently observing the giant ship at the dock not far away, a ray of flames suddenly shot out from the top of the mountain behind him. In just a blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the giant ship. The flames dissipated, revealing the back of a gray-robed wizard. He was floating in front of the bow of the main ship in the center of the fleet. It's the Lap Wizard. Two figures who seem to be official wizards flew out from the main ship, and together they welcomed the Lap Wizard onto the giant ship. Immediately afterwards, a voice suddenly came from the bow of the main ship in the shape of a ball-carrying girl. Ahem, my wizard friends from Blackstone Island. We are the Black Pearl Caravan. The caravan ships will stay at the island's port for 7 days. During this period, everyone is welcome to come to the ship market to buy knowledge, materials, slaves. You can buy everything you want here. As the sound rang out, the figures on the armored ships swayed, and soon, huge chain ladders were erected between the ships to fix and connect them to each other. Thanks to Mr. Rapp. 60 years ago, these caravans didn't look like this, Luke said with emotion. Although he had never experienced it, he had only heard about it and still sighed. 60 years ago, the Lap Wizards had not yet arrived on this island. The original official wizard of the Blackstone family on the island has died. At that time, these caravans were not so polite. Transactions always only happen between two equal parties. These caravans are also called pirates in some places. Colin remained silent. After all, the weak people like them can only have such a stable life now because of the protection and order established by the Lap Wizard on the island. Click, click, click. At this time, the sound of the collision of mechanical gears came from the giant ship closest to the pier in the distance. The next second, a sloping gray-black steel step was raised from its side and placed accurately on the pier. The overall steel staircase is about 5 or 6 meters wide, with railings on both sides, just like the boarding stairs of an airplane in a previous life. There is no doubt that this is the entryway to the boat market. Colin stepped forward, preparing to go to the boat market. But the corner of his clothes was held by Luke. Wait for the adults to leave first, Luke reminded quietly, using his eyes to signal Colin to pay attention to Regina and other senior wizard apprentices next to him. Colin paused for a moment, waiting until Regina and other senior wizard apprentices passed by them. They continued to move forward with the others. Walking up the steel stairs, it looks shaky and fragile, but it is extremely stable when you walk on it. It must have been reinforced with witchcraft. When you step on it, it makes a dull, thick sound. The stairs are not short, and the senior wizard apprentices have already flown up. Now only the intermediate wizard apprentices, a small number of junior wizard apprentices who were brought to see the world, and Regina, who has just advanced, are still climbing. Not long after, Colin finally walked up the stairs and walked onto the deck. What comes into view is a gray-black plane with no masts or sails. There are only 3 huge chimneys that stand like thorns, and a few wisps of faint white-gray smoke are slowly emerging from them. On the bridge in the middle of the ship, there were many crew members dressed as sailors who were carrying things to the deck one after another, apparently preparing to set up stalls. The stalls outside here don't have anything good, Luke said, looking back over Colin. He led everyone towards the bridge not far away and introduced. The Black Pearl Caravan has a total of 15 ships. When it docks at Blackstone Island, the main ship open to us is this main ship and the 4 auxiliary ships next to it. During this week, the decks of the 5 ships will be filled with stalls. Usually there is nothing good, but you can also go shopping. The real ship market of the caravan is actually hidden on the first floor below the deck. It is like the Wizard's Alley on the island, with various shops. Colin nodded. This information was obviously given by Luke specifically to him, a first-time visitor. It has to be said that although Luke is smooth and sophisticated, he has the right sense of proportion and will not be annoying. Following Luke, he walked down the narrow stairs to the deck. Before he could reach the lower level, noisy sounds first reached his ears. After walking a few more steps, a gray corridor that was considered wide on the ship appeared in front of him. The corridor can accommodate about 4 people parallel to each other. There are similar cabins on both sides. The doors of these cabins are very narrow. Even if they are opened, it is still difficult to see what kind of store it is from the outside. Fortunately, there are signs printed on the walls outside each store which save some trouble. I'm going to buy some big night slaves. Does anyone want to go to the slave area? We can go together. Luke turned around and asked. I go. Is there anyone who wants to buy bloodline materials? Is there anyone who wants to buy witchcraft tools? Everyone in the school whispered to each other and gradually left in groups. Colin, if you haven't decided what to buy, do you want to go to the slave area to have a look? Before leaving, Luke asked when he saw that Colin was still there. Colin smiled and shook his head. I plan to walk around by myself first. Luke nodded, paused, and then lowered his voice. On the ship, it is usually best to avoid conflicts with the wizards of the Black Pearl Caravan. Of course, if you are just a junior wizard, there is no need to be polite. But for intermediate level, you need to measure your strength and pay more attention to whether the other party has companions. As for intermediate level and above, he patted Colin on the shoulder. I don't need to say more. Colin nodded. On the island, the Lap School is the undoubted overlord. Although their apprentices are not usually domineering, in fact they are not far behind. But the ship is no longer the territory of the school, and the strength of the Black Pearl Caravan is obviously not weaker than that of the school. When you come here, you naturally need to be careful in your words and deeds. Of course, with the Lap Wizard around, there is no need to be too cautious, you just need to pay a little attention. After all, if there is a conflict, as long as there is no big trouble, neither the official wizard of the Black Pearl Caravan nor the Lap Wizard will obviously care. At this time, if trouble comes to your door, it all depends on your own strength. This is also the reason why most of Luke and others choose to stay together. Although there seemed to be only one long corridor on the lower deck, there were actually many forked roads extending in all directions. In just the blink of an eye, Luke and the others disappeared, leaving only Colin at the entrance. But he was not worried about finding the way. In a wooden box on the right side of the entrance, there is a stack of printed black and white maps of the underground floor neatly stacked, with the main business contents and locations of shops in different areas marked in detail. Resisting his curiosity to look around, Colin took out a map from the wooden box and looked for a shop where he could buy witchcraft crystals. He needs to change the bright crystal into a magic stone first. Following the guidance of the map, Colin walked into the corridor, turned at the second intersection, and came to a store on the far left that specialized in purchasing witchcraft crystals. The store was very crowded, more like a warehouse than a store, and very deserted. But it's normal to be deserted. After all, wizards come to the ship market to buy things they can't usually buy. As for witchcraft crystals, there is a place to buy them on the island. This store buys witchcraft crystals, not sells witchcraft crystals. Seeing him come in, the boss, half lying behind the counter, said calmly. He has been to Blackstone Island many times, and no one here would come to the ship to sell witchcraft crystals. The gray-robed wizard who walked in must have gone to the wrong place. Colin remained silent, took off the large bag he was carrying, placed it on the counter, and then opened it with his hands. Wow! Nearly 1,000 bright crystals accumulated in a month were scattered, falling on the counter and reflecting the light. Although the total value of this pile of bright crystals is only about 90 magic stones, when they are brought together, they are truly spectacular. Although the boss had experienced many battles and was not too shocked, he still raised his eyebrows slightly. He stood up and came to Colin. Are they all bright crystals? He picked up a white bright crystal and asked. Yes, 900 in total. The boss nodded slightly, took out a huge flat-bottomed tray, poured all the bright crystals on the counter into it, spread them out, and lowered his head to evaluate them. Only a minute later, he raised his head, took off the single round-rimmed glasses on his left eye, and said to Colin, Well, that's right, 900 in total. The quality is quite good. It's considered to be first-rate. The price I'm giving you here is the total. He looked at young Colin, and suddenly his heart moved. He paused and asked again, Did you make all these bright crystals? Colin looked at the boss slightly, and then replied calmly, I did it. The boss smiled and took the initiative to explain. I'm just curious about the bright crystals here. I can give you a total of 99 magic stones. 99 magic stones, which is 9 more magic stones than selling on the island. Colin was not in a hurry to rejoice and asked in a deep voice, What's the price? The boss still had that friendly smile, and he continued, There is no price. It's just a verbal agreement of mutual benefit. All I need is that you accumulate the witchcraft crystals you make every year and sell them to me when the caravan arrives. I will buy them at this price." He didn't wait for Colin to respond before adding, "I understand Blackstone Island. If nothing changes in the past 6 months, you can only sell these 900 magic stones on the island for 90 magic stones, which is 9 magic stones less than the price I gave. Moreover, I think there is probably a reason why you did not choose to sell on the island." Colin's heart trembled, and he became wary as he watched the smiling face of his boss. In this world, there is really no one who can become a wizard. However, he had expected this and was not too surprised. Anyway, the most the boss can think of is this. Whether you are being acquired at a lower price or being refused acquisition, no matter what, there is always a reason for you to come to the ship to sell. The boss added, "But I don't care about these reasons. I will spend 99 magic stones to acquire your light. Crystal, in some places, I can make it add a 0 at the end, so don't think I have ulterior motives. Although you are just a human being, mosquito legs are also meat. Don't believe it either. Although bright crystals are common, there happen to be places where there are neither crystal mines, nor are they particularly in need of light. 10 times more light. The price is not an exaggeration." After saying this, the boss couldn't help but pause and said with some pride, "This is the charm of ocean trade." After speaking, he looked at Colin with a calm expression. He really didn't have anything else on his mind, he just mentioned it casually. For a businessman like him, he is not afraid of many roads, but afraid of few roads, so he will not take the narrow road. "Deal," Colin said solemnly. A skilled smile appeared on the boss's face. He put away the bright crystal, counted out 100 magic stones, and handed them to Colin. "With 1 extra magic stone, I think it's a good start for the first transaction," he said with a smile. Colin took the magic stone, his heart became lighter, and he casually replied, "I wish you a lot of money on this voyage." "Thank you." The boss smiled and said, "You don't have to be too envious." Colin paused, said nothing, and just walked quickly towards the door. But the boss stopped him again. Maybe it's because long-term sailing at sea makes people feel lonely, or maybe they feel the need to connect with new partners. In short, the boss seemed to have opened up the chat box and then talked to him a lot. At first, Colin was impatient, but the boss's verbose words do contain a lot of experience and knowledge he gained during ocean voyages. These were the knowledge he lacked, so later he even took the initiative to chat with his boss, trying to focus the topic on what he was interested in. "If you want to become an affiliated merchant like me, it's easy. I know the director of the Black Pearl Caravan. As long as 30,000 magic stones are needed, I can get you a name in the caravan. Then you will spend more money every time. For the sailing fee of 5,000 magic stones, you can have a warehouse like mine on the ship." Colin chatted patiently with him for a long time before standing up to say goodbye. After walking out of the shop, he came to a corner, unfolded the map on the first floor of the deck, determined the location, and walked quickly forward. It was not too early to come here, and I had just chatted with the owner of the Witchcraft Crystal Shop for a long time. It was almost 6 o'clock, and night was about to fall. As soon as the sun goes down, the shipping market will be closed, or the entire fleet will be closed to resist the weird horrors, monsters and ghosts hidden in the darkness of the sea. So, you have to hurry up. Not long after, he came to the middle of the first floor of the entire deck. In front of him was a special cabin that was obviously several times larger than other cabins. The outer wall at the door had Black Pearl Bookstore written in large characters. He is here to complete the second goal he set, to obtain the knowledge to advance to a formal wizard. It's never too early to prepare for a rainy day. However, I just don't know if I can buy relevant knowledge with these magic stones. When he entered the store, he had nothing to hide and asked directly to the clerk. "Excuse me, is there any relevant knowledge here about advancing to a formal wizard?" Hearing his question, the clerk was obviously startled, but he didn't think much about it. But his attitude was more respectful. After all, they have encountered wild wizards who purchased this knowledge on many islands. For wild wizards, it is normal to have no systematic knowledge and not know how to go forward. Thinking about it, the gray-robed wizard in front of him was obviously in the same situation. Yes, the clerk said, "Do you need a complete set of advanced knowledge, or just an overview of advanced wizards? What's the difference between the two?" Colin pondered for a moment and asked calmly, He was only wearing the most ordinary gray robe today, and the badge of the school on his chest had been taken off. Before that, he had been looking around for a long time, not far away, making sure that there were no other island apprentices in the store before he walked in. The complete set of advanced knowledge includes meditation methods, etc. The overview is just a general summary of the advanced wizard. You can understand it this way. The former is a detailed and specific set of knowledge for advancing to a formal wizard, while the latter is a summary overview of most of the processes for advancing to a formal wizard. Colin nodded, touched the bulging money bag in his arms, and asked, "How many magic stones do these two have?" The complete set of advanced knowledge is 50,000 magic stones, and the summary is 350 magic stones. The clerk replied kindly. Tap, tap, tap. The horse's hooves made a clear sound on the hard ground, and the pure black horses pulled the same black carriage towards the city. Behind it is the endless sea. Through the gap between the giant ships at the pier, at the junction of blue and blue in the distance, a trace of orange-red light is sinking, and the light clouds next to it are still floating on the sea level, undergoing the final silent burning. Dark night is coming. Kakak. The sound of the collision of mechanical gears came from the dock, and the gray-black boarding ladder was like a bird folding its wings and folding back to the side of the ship. In the carriage, Colin sighed inaudibly. He didn't care about the embarrassment of finally leaving the store because he had no money. After all, having no money was nothing to be ashamed of, and the store clerk had a gentle attitude from beginning to end. But the knowledge of becoming a formal wizard was clearly right in front of him, but it was as far away as the sky, which really made him a little unwilling. I'm not in a hurry. After all, I'm not even a senior wizard apprentice yet. He could only comfort himself silently. Soon after, he returned to his home on Palm Street. After dinner, Colin started practicing as usual. He came to the basement and took the lead in practicing solar breathing. The night level has reached Great Night, 99/100, and is only a little short of breaking through to the ultimate Great Night. Maintaining a regular breathing rhythm, Colin performed the movements meticulously according to the second limit-breaking daylight breathing method that was now completely different from the original one. The muscle lines that are usually not showy, under the stimulation of the solar breathing method, are now pulsating like the waves of knotted tree roots. Not long after, sweat began to appear on his upper body, first on his forehead, then on the tip of his nose, neck, and back. The black cotton short sleeves were suddenly soaked. I don't know how long it took, and I don't know how many times I practiced it. At a certain moment, Colin suddenly felt that a certain layer of blockage was suddenly opened. Not as grand as when he broke through the Great Night. This body transformation was completed in an instant, after a feeling like an electric shock. As if the screen was stuck, his movements suddenly stopped. Under the action of inertia, a drop of crystal sweat on the tip of his nose was quickly thrown forward and into the air. The world was pressed into slow motion, and he felt his breathing slow down. And the drop of sweat flew slowly in the air like a snail, and its trajectory was clearly visible. Colin subconsciously wanted to reach out and grab the crystal drop of sweat, but the moment this thought appeared, his body responded instantly, as if there was no delay. Ah! The sweat droplet was actually caught by him and fell into his palm, leaving a wet watermark. Colin looked shocked. Under normal circumstances, even if he is a great knight, it stands to reason that he cannot catch these drops of sweat. This is not only related to his own speed, but also to the speed of his reaction. Sweat drops fall in a parabola in the air. Under the influence of gravity, it only takes a few tenths of a second or a few hundred milliseconds to fall to the ground at a height of less than 2 meters. A normal untrained person's reaction speed is usually within the range of 200 to 300 milliseconds. Some talented people, after training, can increase this data to between 100 and 200 milliseconds. But that's all. As a great knight, his original reaction speed is also between 100 and 200 milliseconds. This is the limitation of the human body. A complete movement process begins with visual, auditory, tactile, etc. stimulation received and transmitted to the brain, and then the brain transmits the signal to the muscles through the nervous system, and the muscles then respond. The time required for this process is the reaction time in common cognition, It contains two main parts. The stimulation is transmitted to the brain, and the brain transmits the signal to the muscles. But in any case, the transmission of these signals relies on the nervous system, and the speed of reaction is basically determined by the speed of signal transmission by the nervous system. And the nervous system is difficult to change. This means that by the time a normal person reacts, the water droplet has already dropped by less than half. It is very difficult to catch it again at this time. Although when the solar breathing method broke through the second limit, he already knew that under the influence of the gold paper, the night system was opened up in a new way, and a realm he had never heard of appeared. I also know that after advancing to this realm, my reaction speed will be greatly improved. But he didn't expect the effect to be so immediate. Perhaps with the gold paper, I can take a few steps forward at the end of the night's road. Colin sighed in his heart and moved forward, adapting to his body that seemed to be brand new. After a while, the moon hung on the branches. After Colin adapted to the state after the breakthrough, he left the basement and returned to the master bedroom. After taking a quick shower, this time without taking a bath, he hurried to the meditation room. It's getting late, but I haven't done my daily meditation yet. And when he was giving Demi a makeover in the morning, he unexpectedly discovered that complex exercises could increase the speed of advancement. But so far, he has only tested witchcraft and transformation. He has not yet tested whether the meditation method is the same, which makes him impatient to start meditating. Coming to the meditation room, lighting the Ningxian incense, Colin sat cross-legged and entered the meditative state with ease. But this time, unlike before, he did not meditate along the most conventional path, but instead took many fancy detours. Originally, after breaking the limit of the circle meditation method, he only needed 6 hours of meditation every day, but because he deliberately made it complicated this time, his efficiency was greatly reduced. So it wasn't until dawn broke and the morning glow dispersed that he slowly opened his eyes. Look at the pocket watch in your hand. 12 hours have passed. The time consumed is not the point. The key is the improvement of the progress of the limit-breaking circle meditation method. He breathed out the golden paper. The pale golden particles gathered together, and a piece of gold paper appeared in front of him, somewhere between illusion and reality. Colin couldn't wait to find the apprenticeship circle meditation column. The next second, uncontrollable joy appeared on his face. The progress after that limit-breaking circle meditation method has actually reached 84 out of 100. Before that, if he remembered correctly, the progress should have been only 81/100. A full 3 points improvement. Can one meditation session improve 3 points? Colin exhaled slightly and shook his head. The real improvement progress should be a little over 2 points. After all, the previous progress would not be exactly 81, but more than 81. But no matter what, if he follows this progress, it will only take another 6 to 8 days for him to reach the limit of the circle meditation method again. Getting up, Colin stretched his muscles and thought carefully. Before that, I meditated for 6 hours a day, and the progress of the limit-breaking circle meditation method was about 2 points in 3 days and 1 point in 2 days. But now that meditation has become more complicated and the meditation time has been extended to 12 hours, the rate of improvement in the progress of the meditation method has suddenly reached 3 o'clock a day, which is 3 to 5 times higher than before. Although it is not as good as the dozens of times difference between practicing the blood pattern transformation technique with rabbits and practicing with people. But this improvement is still very exaggerated. He felt as if he had faintly touched the deep rules behind the golden paper. Every practice will lead to progress. He rubbed the smooth surface of the metal pocket watch in his hand and muttered to himself. The complete process of casting witchcraft is to mentally mobilize the magic power to cast witchcraft. Meditation is essentially using your mind to draw magic into your body until it reaches the limit that can be accommodated that day. In general knowledge, casting witchcraft, no matter how complicated the process is, no matter how the magic power is mobilized, as long as you use all your strength, the final magic power consumed will be the same and will not change. The results will not be different in nature. In meditation, the same thing, no matter how complicated the process is, no matter how the spirit is mobilized to draw the magic power into the body, In the end, the limit that can be accommodated on that day will not change. This limit is only related to the meditation method and one's own qualifications. Just like walking, no matter how complicated the process is, it is just from A to B. But now it seems that the golden paper does not just judge the level of practice from A to B, as is generally believed, but measures the entire process in a more detailed way. In this case, Colin put away his pocket watch and smiled lightly. This not only means that he has found a more efficient way to practice, but also that the biggest restriction limiting his practice has been solved. This restriction is mainly due to meditation. In the past, his limit of meditation time per day was only 6 hours. But now, he can complicate his meditation and reduce its efficiency, thereby extending the time it takes to 12 hours, or even longer. Generally speaking, ordinary wizards would not do this unless they were crazy. After all, although the meditation time is extended, this is at the expense of efficiency. The ultimate increase in magic power will not change in any way, but instead consumes unnecessary energy. But in Colin's case, although the speed of increasing wizard level will not change with this method, the speed of improvement of the circle meditation method will be greatly enhanced. And the progress of the circle meditation method is improved, or even breaks the limit, which will in turn increase the growth rate of his wizard level progress. Therefore, unlike other wizards, this behavior is just a waste of energy. For him, this seemingly waste of energy is actually a shortcut. After realizing this, Colin decisively began to retreat. Anyway, he couldn't afford the knowledge he wanted to advance to become a formal wizard, and he had nothing else he wanted to buy. So, it's okay not to go to the boat market. Another 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. Today is already the 6th day since the arrival of the Black Pearl Caravan. At dawn the day after tomorrow, they will set sail again. In fact, as early as 4 days ago, the Black Pearl Caravan had replenished some supplies needed for ocean voyages from the island and was ready to leave. Palm Street, the highest wealthy area. Dawn was just breaking on the horizon. In the master bedroom of a mainly gray 2-story villa, Colin opened his eyes in the meditation room. As soon as he opened his eyes, he couldn't wait to breathe out the gold paper. Pale golden particles gathered. On that translucent gold paper, a dim symbol slowly emerged behind the apprenticeship circle meditation method eye. This means that the limit can be broken again. Colin stood up contentedly, flexed his muscles, and had an uncontrollable smile on his lips. Over the past 4 days, he had tried to complicate the meditation process of the circle meditation method as much as possible, reducing the efficiency as much as possible in order to extend the meditation time. He meditated for 12 hours at first, but later he could even meditate for 16 to 18 hours. If he had nothing else to do, he could even continue to extend the time. And this extension also accelerated the progress of the circle meditation method again. In just 5 days, 1 day earlier than the shortest 6 days he expected, he successfully improved the circle meditation method to the limit. The money bag had already been placed on the low table next to him. Colin exhaled softly and began to transform the breaking point. On the gold paper, the characters after breaking the limit point began to jump. In an instant, it reached 100. At the same time, the originally dim symbol behind the circle meditation method suddenly appeared with a circle of purple light. Concentrating his thoughts, Colin took a breath, no longer hesitated, and pointed towards the symbol. Along with the influx of countless knowledge, the purple symbol behind the circle meditation method suddenly trembled and then shattered like ink drops falling into water, spreading towards the characters next to it. The originally light blue apprenticeship circle meditation method eye, 100-100, was suddenly dyed a charming purple, and the content gradually became blurred. It was finally fixed as apprenticeship circle meditation method 2-0/100. Seeing this dazzling and charming purple, Colin couldn't help but feel refreshed, and the fatigue accumulated from long-term meditation over the past few days seemed to have subsided a lot. But this was just an illusion after all. He left the master bedroom and fell asleep after breakfast. But he didn't sleep long before Renee woke him up. "You're saying that a guard came to tell me to go to the inspection office now, saying that it was called by Captain Flower?" Colin lifted the quilt and got up, but he didn't look sleepy. After all, he was not physically tired, but mentally tired from long and boring meditation. Now, after taking a short rest, I have recovered. Yes, master. Renee got the witch robe for him and added. The guard said that he summoned all the wizards in the inspection department. Colin nodded, put on his witch robe, and went downstairs. At Renee's instruction, Groom Arthur had prepared the carriage and was waiting for him in the yard. But at this time, there was a knock on the courtyard door again. Renee went to open the door, and it was Luke. Good morning, Colin. Luke greeted. He looked at Colin, who was getting ready, and said, It seems that you have also received the notice from the guard. Good morning, Luke. Colin responded with a confused expression. Are you here? I'm here to find you and go to the patrol office with us. Luke took the initiative to explain. After Lady Regina became a senior wizard apprentice, she has been appointed by the school as the deputy captain of the inspection division and has become our immediate boss. The reason Lord Flowers summoned all the members this time is probably to announce that Lady Regina has become the vice captain. Colin nodded, still looking a little confused. Luke smiled again and said frankly, To tell you the truth, I came to you specifically to ask for something. Due to some things before, there was a slight gap between us and Lady Regina's group. Since you had a good relationship with Lady Regina, I wanted to ask you for a favor. Colin remained calm, but frowned inwardly. This matter is not easy to handle. Don't worry, you won't take any risks, Luke added. After Lady Regina advanced, she didn't take us to heart at all, but her former companions secretly relied on her power to be aggressive, and on the other hand, they blocked our request to see Lady Regina. At this point, Luke couldn't help but sigh. He originally thought that these apprentices from the patrol team on the mountain would not stay at the foot of the mountain for long, and Black Rock City would always be their territory. He thought that after Regina advanced, she would no longer hold the position of patrol office, but would return to the wizarding territory to concentrate on her training. After all, that's how the school is. Talented apprentices only need to focus on training, while apprentices like them who don't have much talent need to take on various chores. But he didn't expect that after Regina advanced, she would still stay in the inspection office, and she was even appointed as the deputy captain. Of course, we won't let you do it in vain. He looked at Colin and said, 100 magic stones. We just need you to help us pass a message to Lady Regina. After saying that, he looked at Colin quietly. For a moment, the only sounds in the yard were the sound of the breeze and the snorting of the black horse nearby. After thinking about it for a long time, Sorry, Luke. Colin still rejected Luke. Although 100 magic stones are tempting, it is just an embarrassing number for him. If you look at these 100 magic stones in the long run, they can't compare to the profit he makes in a month from making bright crystals. In the short term, these 100 magic stones are not of much use to him. It neither allows the intermediate level to break the limit, nor allows him to purchase the knowledge of an advanced formal wizard worth at least 350 magic stones. What's more, he didn't owe Luke any favors. He had paid corresponding rewards for the previous blood pattern transformation technique. Although he and Luke were considered acquaintances, their friendship was indeed not enough to allow him to take this risk. Moreover, the information he has learned so far is all Luke's words. In fact, he does not know what Regina thinks specifically and why Luke and others conflicted with Regina and others. Seeing that he didn't agree, Luke sighed but didn't say anything more. Instead, he forced a smile and reassured Colin that he didn't need to be sorry. Then, the two of them got into their own carriages and rushed towards the inspection office. The carriage came to a screeching halt, and Colin and Luke got out of the car respectively, looked at each other, nodded slightly, and walked towards the gate of the inspection office together. Pushing open the door, many people were already sitting on the long brown table in the middle of the retro-decorated hall. Seeing Luke and Colin entering together, Carrie and others couldn't help but have a look of joy on their faces. Carrie watched Luke walking slowly and asked with probing eyes. He agreed. Luke shook his head, pulled out the chair next to Carrie and others and sat down. Colin chose a seat near the corner. What do you mean? The joy on Carrie's face disappeared, and she frowned and asked, Did Colin not agree? Luke, what is the specific situation? Joseph next to him couldn't help but asked doubtfully. Colin didn't agree. Luke shook his head, and said lightly without explaining too much. No agreement? Joseph was surprised. That's 100 magic stones? Isn't he interested at all? Luke said nothing and shook his head silently. I really misjudged him. Carrie frowned even more tightly and cursed through gritted teeth. She looked at Luke and said, obviously you helped him find transformation techniques before. I didn't expect that he wouldn't even help with this small favor now. After saying that, she turned her head and stared hard at Colin, who was looking down at the manuscript not far away. Colin felt the gaze, looked up, saw Luke and others, and understood. He didn't pay attention and continued reading the manuscript. Joseph on the side didn't think anything was wrong at first, but after hearing Carrie's words, his expression gradually darkened, and he became a little angry. This Colin is really not a good thing. But Luke frowned slightly, paused, and said in a deep voice, I was paid to find the transformation technique for him. Colin doesn't owe me anything. Carly's face froze, and she said hurriedly, but you and him finally became friends. Friends don't even do such small favors. Luke, you are wrong about him. Luke frowned hard, then relaxed. He calmly turned his head to look at Carrie and said in a deep voice, do you really think so, Carrie? I think what Carrie said makes sense, Luke. Joseph said at the side. Luke glanced at Carrie, Joseph, and several familiar apprentices beside them. Some people had calm faces. Some were just listening curiously, but more people, like Joseph, looked at him with a little angry doubt. First of all, although my relationship with him is not bad, it is not that good, and we are not close friends. He and I are just acquaintances at best. Luke looked calm and began to explain in a deep voice. Secondly, this is no small favor. If it was just a small favor, would you be willing to part with those 100 magic stones? Although we are optimistic, Lady Regina may have a lot of people and won't care about us. But in fact, we have no idea what Lady Regina thinks. To take a step back, even if Regina doesn't care about us, will the friends around her be as magnanimous as she is? How much benefit did we rob them of in the first place? I don't need to explain the risks involved. Having said this, Luke added another sentence. It's natural for others to help you. If others don't help you, you'll feel resentful. He shook his head and said no more. It is enough to say so much. Those who can understand have already understood it. Those who cannot understand will not understand if I continue to talk. Moreover, at this time, it is the best time to judge which people are worthy of continuing to date. Callie still looked a little angry and seemed to want to refute. Joseph on the side was no longer angry. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, huh? At this moment, Flower walked down the spiral staircase, his huge body making the stairs creak. Behind him was Regina, who still looked pale and indifferent, and the inseparable black cat was still missing. Captain Flower, Lady Regina. Everyone greeted him respectfully. Flower sat down at the head of the long table, Regina sitting next to him. I think some of you already know. Flower glanced around and spoke slowly. The news you know is correct. Wizard Regina has indeed successfully advanced to the Advanced Wizard Apprenticeship and has also been appointed by Lord Hongyan as an inspector, vice captain of the department. I summoned everyone today just to announce this. All the wizards nodded. Fru paused for a moment and then said, besides this matter, there are two other things I want to remind everyone. The Black Pearl Caravan has recently arrived, and there are many strange wizards on the island. It is inevitable that there will be some friction. 2 days ago, an intermediate apprentice from the Chiwin gang clashed with an intermediate apprentice from the caravan at the Giant Axe Tavern. I believe some of you already know the outcome. Let me briefly summarize it again. The final result was that the Chiwin gang unilaterally paid a large sum of money to the Black Pearl Caravan. Not only was the apprentice seriously injured, he was also expelled from the Chiwin gang and is now missing. Colin's ears twitched slightly, and someone next to him was talking in a low voice. Where else can we go? I'll be caught on board without even thinking about it. Oh, what a disaster. I know that apprentice, but it was just because the dancer next to me was so beautiful that the apprentice of the caravan took a liking to her. Someone else added. I remind everyone that the Black Pearl Caravan will leave the day after tomorrow. There are only 2 days. Try to avoid conflicts with them. At this point, Flower paused for a moment, and the quiet conversation next to Colin disappeared. Flower looked around at the wizards and said, "Of course, I just said don't take the initiative to cause trouble. But there is no need to be afraid of trouble. After all, we're the lap school, not the Chiwen gang. If there is a conflict, Teacher Rapp will make the decision for us." A proud look appeared on Flower's face, and all the apprentices present felt proud as well. Colin also showed a proud look, but his heart remained calm. Maybe it's because he came from time travel and didn't live in the school since he was a child. The memory of the original owner is more like a database. Therefore, although he respects and awes the lap wizards and recognizes and appreciates the school, he does not have the same respect and recognition as the members of the school. The power of the lap wizard is only the power of the lap wizard. The prestige of the school is only the power of the lap wizard. Not theirs, not his. Flower then talked some more and then announced the disbandment. He walked back to his office on the second floor with heavy steps. Regina on the side walked towards the door, guarded by another group of wizards. "Let's go." Luke saw this and was about to get up and follow him. But Carrie on the side sneered coldly. "Don't waste your efforts. How many times have we tried? Are we still hitting a wall?" Luke paused for a moment, said nothing, and continued walking towards Regina. "I would say it would be best to ask Colin to mediate for us." Carrie looked at the apprentices next to her and added in a low voice. She specially emphasized the word please. She has never changed her mind. This matter is obviously a small matter to Colin. He had such a good relationship with Regina before. What risk could he take? Besides, even if you take a risk, it's only a little bit. But as for them, they're being squeezed every day by those thugs who rely on Regina's prestige, and all the resources that originally belonged to them are taken away. It was obvious that they were in the worst situation, and it was not like Colin was asked to do this without being paid, so why shouldn't he help? A glimmer of understanding flashed in Carrie's eyes. Ultimately, this was because Colin is just a cold-blooded bastard. When Joseph heard Carrie's words, he felt a little cold for some reason. He walked away quickly in silence and caught up with Luke's figure not far ahead. Next to him, at least half of the apprentices made the same choice as him. But there were still some apprentices left, with inexplicable looks flashing across their faces. On the other side, Colin had already got on the carriage and rushed home. What Flower said later did not make him feel more secure. On the contrary, it made his joy at breaking through to the ultimate night a little less. The experiences of the Chiwen gang apprentices made him realize extremely deeply. The current stable life seems solid and stable, but in fact it is all supported by the Lap Wizard alone. If one day the Lap Wizard, the breeze lifted the curtains of the round window of the carriage, and he shook his head and stopped thinking about it. The next day, Colin once again took a carriage to the east dock of the city and came to the boat market. He planned to sell the finished photo crystals he had accumulated during the month of practice to Gibson. Gibson is the businessman who purchased the witchcraft crystal for the Black Pearl fleet. Today is the last day of the caravan stay. At dawn tomorrow morning, as soon as the sun comes out, they will set sail to the next place. Although it is the last day, there is still an endless stream of wizards coming and going. Colin didn't look much and came to Gibson's store by a familiar route. Image crystal, that's it? Gibson raised his head in disgust. Colin nodded and said it didn't take long to learn, so the success rate is not high. Okay. Gibson put away the 25 photo crystals on the table, took out 5 magic stones, and handed them to Colin. After you leave Blackstone Island, where will your next stop be? Colin suddenly asked after taking the magic stone. Why? You want to come with us? Do you have enough money? Gibson smiled, then said after a pause. The next stop is Oman Island, which is bigger than Black Rock Island, but not much bigger. Are there any charts for sale in the ship market? Colin nodded, loaded the magic stone, and asked tentatively. As long as you have magic stones, there is nothing here. Gibson said, if you want to buy a chart, you can buy it at the Black Pearl store in the center. Of course, it's just an ordinary chart, and the price is cheap. Yeah. Colin looked calm, paused, and then said, where are you here? Do you have a chart here? How much does it cost? Gibson was stunned and smiled in surprise. You do have some sense. I do have a chart here. If you want it, sign a non-publication contract, and I can sell it to you. Of course the price won't be cheap. After all, this is not the ordinary nautical chart on the market that fools people. After so many years of careful collection and drawing, the information on it is at least 10 times more than the ordinary nautical charts on the market. So how much? 50 magic stones, no two prices. Deal. Colin responded calmly and poured out 50 magic stones from his money bag. In fact, he had already asked about the C chart at Black Pearl Bookstore yesterday, and the clerk mentioned 3 prices from low to high, namely 5 magic stones, 200 magic stones, and 500 magic stones. The clerk said that as the price increases, the information inside will also increase. This is obviously a routine that has been used by merchants all over the world. It sets 2 unreasonable prices for similar products, 1 low price and 1 high price. The actual purpose is to get customers to buy a model with a mid-range price. So he chose to buy the cheapest version of the 5 magic stones. Anyway, the 5 magic stones were not too much for him. What's more, he can't afford other more expensive versions. As for the content of the chart, I can only say that it is worthy of its price. However, for safe navigation at sea, such a chart is obviously not enough. That's why he suddenly thought of asking Gibson to see if he could buy a better chart. Seeing him agreeing so readily, Gibson felt inexplicably at a disadvantage and reluctantly completed the deal with Colin. After getting the thick chart, Colin opened it and silently compared it with the chart worth 5 magic stones he bought yesterday. It's definitely much better than the ordinary charts you buy on the market. You won't suffer any loss, Gibson said angrily when he saw this. Thanks. Colin put away the chart, smiled at Gibson, and said nothing more to stimulate him. Just a cursory look at this chart was worth the 50 magic stones he spent. The information above is not only 10 times more than the map of the 5 magic stones, but even 20 times more. Not only are countless islands of various sizes marked on the chart, but most of them also have simple introductions to the customs and customs, as well as other supplementary information records. In addition, the sea area is also divided into many large and small areas, and relevant information is also recorded where there are dangers and where there are precautions. Although it is not very detailed or perfect, the price of 50 magic stones is already worth every penny. After saying goodbye to Gibson, Colin came to Black Pearl Bookstore again. When the clerk saw him coming, his eyes lit up and he came over to greet him. "My lord, have you collected the magic stones?" she said with a smile. "The knowledge of becoming a formal wizard is still reserved for you." Colin shook his head. His purpose here was clear. "Do you have any relevant knowledge about advanced wizard apprentices?" "An overview," he said slowly. Yesterday morning, he successfully broke through the circle meditation method for the 2nd time. In the evening, he did his daily meditation as usual, mentally looking forward to the effect of the 2nd limit-breaking meditation method. When he saw the gold paper this morning, he was not disappointed. The level of the intermediate wizard apprentice has been raised by 2 points, which means that in more than 2 months at most, he can advance to the advanced wizard apprentice level. Although he had learned relevant knowledge in this area in the school for the sake of safety, he still wanted to obtain more knowledge and confirm and compare. He did not ignore Regina's pale and miserable appearance after she became a senior apprentice. Yes, it happens to be a complete set of knowledge for advanced wizards. The clerk paused for a moment and then replied in one breath, "Actually, we not only have the knowledge for advanced senior wizard apprentices and advanced wizards. There are also relevant knowledge for entry-level junior wizard apprentices and advanced intermediate wizard apprentices. The knowledge is a complete set, both summarized and detailed with meditations." Having said this, she smiled sweetly and said, "If you buy these pieces of knowledge together, you can get a 10% discount. You can also enjoy this discount if you buy all the overviews together or all the detailed versions together. With them, sir, you can even establish an entire school of thought." "No need." Colin quickly interrupted the clerk. "How much does it cost to advance to a senior wizard apprentice?" 50 magic stones. No bargaining." "Okay, give me one." Colin took out the magic stone and blocked the clerk's sales in advance. "This is all I need. No need to introduce others to me." "Okay, my lord." It was still noon after he came out of Black Pearl Bookstore, but he had no intention of continuing to visit the boat market. So he got off the boat directly, got on the carriage, and returned home. "Drive." Arthur waved his riding crop, and the shiny black horse neighed and moved forward quickly with the black carriage. Colin sat in the carriage and couldn't wait to open the overview of the Advanced Wizard's Apprentice that he just bought from Black Pearl Bookstore. The overview is a black-covered booklet with a few large white characters printed on it, a summary of Advanced Wizard Apprentices. Other than that, there are no other characters, and it looks like a pirated book from a street stall in the past life. The book was not thick, and when they arrived at Palm Street more than an hour later, Colin had almost finished reading it roughly. "Call." The carriage gradually stopped in the yard. Colin looked away from the book, exhaled slightly, put it away carefully, and stepped out of the carriage. "Sir." Renee was already standing outside the carriage to greet him. Colin nodded slightly and walked quickly towards the house. Although this overview booklet is not long, it is concise and comprehensive, and every word is precise. It is very enlightening to read. 50 magic stones are worth every penny. He couldn't wait to return to the meditation room and study it again. When the door is opened, behind him, he heard Renee, who had just greeted him, seeming to be giving instructions to his sister Demi. "Demi, don't go to far places recently. It's dangerous outside, so be obedient." He paused for a moment, but without stopping, he quickly came to the meditation room. Colin returned to the meditation room and cast a spell to light up the crystal of light. Previously, the original owner had been a wizard on the mountain for 10 years. Although he is dull in talent, he is very diligent. Due to his talent, he only has a partial understanding of a lot of knowledge, but at least he has kept it firmly in mind. The same is true for knowledge related to advanced apprenticeships. Although I just memorized it by rote, I still have a comprehensive understanding. In fact, this is where wizards from the school are stronger. The original owner had not learned any powerful witchcraft during the 10 years he had been a wizard. However, it has laid a solid foundation that, although not perfect, can at least be considered solid. The solid foundation formed by these basic knowledge, and even the subsequent advanced knowledge, are the backbone of the wizard system. Arrow shooting, blood pattern transformation, witchcraft crystal production, etc. These are just the flowers and fruits that bloom on it. The bright crystal lights up, casting soft white light. Colin sat on the soft cushion in the middle of the meditation room and continued to flip through the overview booklet. He has in his mind the complete knowledge of advanced apprentices taught by the school, which is specifically aimed at the circle meditation method. The overview booklet is a summary of advanced apprenticeships in various meditation methods. Comparing and corroborating each other between the two, the previously vague knowledge in his mind gradually became clear. After another 3 hours, he read the overview book again, this time carefully, and took many notes on white paper. After reading it this time, he still felt it was not enough and started reading from the first page again. A solid foundation is very important. Under the influence of gold paper, his advancement speed may not be as good as some legendary monsters, but it can also be said to be far superior to ordinary people. The superficial reason is that the second limit-breaking circle meditation method is of better quality than the original circle meditation method. Moreover, the circle meditation method, after breaking the limit, was completely tailored for him. But there is another factor that must be taken into consideration. The powerful effect of gold paper. Every practice will lead to progress. So, ultimately, the real reason why he was able to improve so quickly, I'm afraid it's because of the combination of the powerful effect of the golden paper. Every practice will lead to progress, and the tailor-made high-quality meditation method, resulting in the effect of 1 + 1 being greater than 2. However, in the practice of wizards, sometimes speed is not the first priority, especially after the intermediate apprenticeship. It's not that you don't need to be fast, it's just that at this time, what is needed more than speed is solidity. Only by maintaining a solid understanding of knowledge and continuing to adhere to one's own humanity can we not be shaken or polluted when the mental fog dissipates and we are exposed to the filthy nonsense in the world. Time flies and twilight falls. In the evening, in the meditation room, Colin exhaled softly and closed the summary booklet. In his hand were neatly stacked manuscripts, densely packed with annotations. Colin called out the gold paper. At this time, The progress of the wizard level is already 12 out of 100, and the progress of the second limit-breaking circle meditation method is 0 out of 100. After combining the overview booklet with the knowledge of advanced apprentices in the school, he gained a lot. In general, the most important thing he needs to pay attention to now and before advancing to a senior wizard is to thoroughly master the meditation method he is currently practicing. It fell to him that he needed to be the first to improve the second limit-breaking circle meditation method to 100 to 100. Colin sighed slightly in his heart. It seems that maybe the time for me to advance is not as imagined. It only takes more than 2 months. If you want to ensure safety, you still have to wait until the second limit-breaking circle meditation method reaches its limit before advancing. He glanced at the gold paper again. Think carefully about the next training arrangements. My witchcraft has basically broken its limit once. Only the purify evil, detect evil, and swift spells have not exceeded the limit. Among them, the 2 witchcrafts of purifying evil energy and detecting evil are not far from reaching their limit, and it is estimated that the limit will be broken in the next 2 days. As for the remaining swiftness, its progress is only 31/100, and it can't even be cast instantly. In addition, judging from the results of last night's meditation, although I have extended the meditation duration to 10 hours, the progress of the second limit-breaking circle meditation method is still only 0. Colin unconsciously rubbed the summary booklet in his hand. If he wanted to make the progress of the second limit-breaking circle meditation method reach the limit as soon as possible, he would undoubtedly need to make the meditation process more complicated, while reducing the efficiency and extending the meditation time. This two-pronged approach may allow you to reach the limit of the intermediate wizard apprentice, and the circle meditation method will reach the limit at about the same time. In this way, he can break through in one fell swoop, but this will undoubtedly consume more time and squeeze his energy into other projects. He needs to choose between them, and he needs to balance the improvement of meditation with the improvement of other projects. Colin pondered for a long time and finally decided to first commit to meditating for at least 15 hours a day. As for other witchcraft skills, they are prioritized and upgraded in sequence. After all, advancing to advanced wizard apprentice is equivalent to breaking the limit of all witchcraft skills once, and there is no need to break the limit point. Furthermore, as he mastered more and more witchcraft, many times, he felt that his own magic power was not enough. Therefore, there is no doubt that advancement needs to be the first priority. After thinking about this, Colin felt relaxed. The subsequent arrangements are clear, and the numbers on the gold paper are increasing every day. The future is full of expectations. He walked out of the meditation room, and Renee stood waiting in the corridor. "Master." Renee bowed slightly in greeting. "Do you need dinner now?" "Bring it to the study." Colin nodded and walked towards the study. But soon he seemed to remember something, paused for a moment, and turned back to call Renee, who was going downstairs. "Wait a minute, Renee, come to the study first." "Okay, master." The study room is not big, but the decoration is exquisite and luxurious. The black iron crystal chandelier is emitting soft light. Colin walked behind the large desk and sat down, leaning on the back of the chair, staring at Renee standing in front of him, and slowly asked, "I heard you telling little Demi. Has something happened recently?" Renee was startled and began to explain slowly. After a while, Colin nodded slightly. "I understand. You go and serve the food first." "Yes, master." Renee turned and left. Colin in the back leaned on the back of the chair and closed his eyes for a short rest. The reason behind Renee's instructions to Demi was not a big deal. It's just because of the rumors circulating in the slums recently, rumors that some civilians have disappeared mysteriously. Colin's frown relaxed slightly. The rumors about the ghetto, he wasn't very worried. After all, even Renee knows about this rumor. If there is any sign behind it, the inspection office will definitely not miss it. However, he pressed his eyebrows. For the sake of caution, tomorrow morning, we'd better go to the patrol office to find Captain Flower. The next day, the sky was dim. Dawn was just emerging from the sea. Woo! At the seaside pier in the east of the city, the Black Pearl fleet set sail. The whistle roared. Tap, tap, tap. Just opposite to the west of the city, there is a street paved with black stones. The black horse's hooves broke through the cool morning mist, pulling the black carriage past, and finally stopped at the gray-black door of the inspection office. Colin stepped out of the car and took a vague look toward the east of the city. The sound of the whistle should be the sign that the caravan has set sail. The next time they come, it will be half a year later. He withdrew his gaze, opened the door, and walked into the inspection office. "Good morning, Luke." After entering the door, he paused for a moment and greeted Luke unexpectedly. Unexpectedly, Luke was at work today. "Good morning." Luke was also a little surprised and said hello with a smile. Colin nodded slightly in greeting and continued walking inside, taking the spiral staircase to the outside of Flower's office on the second floor. "Tuck, tuck, tuck. Please come in." Flower's calm voice came. Colin pushed open the door and entered. "Colin, what brings you here?" Flower asked. Colin walked closer to the desk and spoke slowly. "Relay the rumors heard from Renee yesterday to Flower." "Yes, I understand." Flower nodded slightly, with no expression on his face. Colin waited for a moment and saw that he was still silent, so he took the initiative to say goodbye. "Captain Flower, I'll leave first." Flower nodded again, and when Colin turned around and walked to the door, he suddenly said, "Don't worry, Colin. You just have to work in peace. Don't think too much about anything else, and don't make any noise. The adults have already noticed these signs." Colin paused for a moment and responded in a low voice. "Yes, Captain Flower. Perhaps due to being tortured by Flower's heavy body all day long, this originally sturdy spiral staircase now always makes an overwhelmed creaking sound when walking." Colin walked down the stairs step by step, looking calm. "Perhaps I am still too worried. The lab school has been able to stand on the island for 60 years and has weathered many storms without falling. It is no luck. The inspection office has indeed been aware of these rumors for a long time." Colin shook his head. "You might as well come over and ask. After all, caution is in vain at best, but if you are lucky, you don't know what you will lose." Colin, as he walked through the hall and was about to leave, Luke suddenly stopped him. With his puzzled look on his face, Luke led him to the opposite sofa in the other corner, avoiding the other apprentices sitting on duty. "What's the matter, Luke?" Colin asked first after sitting down. "There is something I want to tell you." Luke smiled and added, "It's just a small thing." He told Colin everything about Carrie, although after the meeting, he did not contact Carrie. But he knew that Carrie had some other ideas secretly. Before, he and Carrie's group were standing together. But now, he has given up most of his interests, surrendered to those people, and has escaped from the whirlpool. Therefore, in order to avoid Colin's misunderstanding, and to avoid himself falling into a new whirlpool again, naturally, he needed to mention it to Colin to remove himself from the matter. "I see." After listening, Colin nodded slightly with a calm expression. Ever since he dueled with Barney and showed his strength, he hasn't encountered these troubles and trivial matters for a long time. However, the world is so big and there are so many people, there will always be some idiots. He understands it very well. Colin stood up to say goodbye and walked out the door. After getting into the carriage, he returned home within a few minutes. But before he got off the carriage, he caught a glimpse of several carriages parked in front of his house. Thinking of Luke's words, he frowned. There is no doubt that there must be an uninvited guest at the door. Half an hour later, in the reception room on the second floor. "I already know your purpose of coming." Colin looked around at Carrie and others in front of him, then shook his head and said in a deep voice, "But I'm sorry, I can't agree to your request. Please go back." He got up to see off the guests. Time is the most precious thing to him. If he didn't want to do something too ugly, he wouldn't spend time dealing with Carrie and others. "You really don't want to think about it, Colin?" Carrie asked with a frown without getting up. After returning from the patrol office the day before yesterday, her temper gradually dissipated. "Although I still resent Colin's unwillingness to help and even despise Colin's villainous attitude. But she also understood that as members of the same school, they would not directly fight over such things. She was not an idiot. At most, some stumbling blocks can be created secretly. At present, the top priority is still to find a way to convince Colin. There is a strict hierarchy among schools of thought. There is a gap in status between them and senior apprentices. It's okay if the senior apprentice doesn't care about this. They can chat for a few words or even interact on a daily basis. But if you care, for example, this time Regina didn't want to talk to them for some reason. There was nothing they could do. It's like a small employee who suddenly wants to find a manager to stop the business. When the manager is unwilling to respond, there is no relationship and there is no acquaintance to connect. How can we possibly negotiate? If they don't want to give up their own interests, the best way is to find Colin, a person who has a relationship with the manager, to mediate. So she left the apprentices behind to discuss how to persuade Colin, but until the evening, they still couldn't come up with a suitable plan. Some people say direct threats of violence. This is obviously not okay, and even the person who proposed it felt inappropriate after saying it. Not to mention Colin's strength that should not be underestimated when he killed Barney. Just his friendly relationship with Regina already restricted them from using violence. Otherwise, are they here to ask Colin to say good things to Regina, or are they here to further offend Regina? There is also talk of kidnapping Colin's maid. No one paid any attention to this plan when he mentioned it. Not to mention a maid, even a lover. Don't even think about threatening a wizard. Regina and I are indeed not as familiar as you think. Please come back. Colin looked calm and emphasized again. As the largest violent organization in Black Rock City, the inspection office naturally involves many interests. Not to mention anything else, just the tribute from those gangs can allow the wizards in the patrol office to earn an income that far exceeds their monthly salary. It was these interests that Luke and others were fighting over with Regina's group before. Logically speaking, he should also be able to get a share of the pie. However, there are no benefits in the world that can be obtained for free. It would have been better at the guard office in the past. Everyone was a member of Yamashita's school of thought, and there wasn't much of a contradiction in the distribution of interests. He's also happy to get a piece of the pie. But now, the patrol office was suddenly established to replace the guard office, and a group of patrol wizards came down from the mountain. There was already a disdainful relationship between the two groups on the mountain and on the mountain, but now that it comes to the distribution of interests, the conflict is undoubtedly even greater. In this situation, if you want to get a piece of the pie, how can you not take sides? Moreover, unlike other situations, in the inspection office, as long as he does not intend to take part of the benefits, he can remain neutral and will not fall into the position of being hated by both parties. After all, if there is no interest, then there will be no conflict of interest between him and the two parties. They are all members of the school, and no fool will come to trouble him. Furthermore, how much benefit will he get? Because he is a newbie, he only has about 20 magic stones per month. It's not a small amount, but it's really not worth getting him involved in this whirlpool. After all, compared to magic stones, time and energy are what he lacks most at this stage. Dealing with the work of the inspection office every day has already made him very sad and takes up a lot of time and energy, let alone spending precious time and energy on these things. Carrie looked at Colin deeply, without saying anything harsh, and turned to leave with the others. Colin looked at Carrie's back, shook his head, and didn't care. After dealing with Carrie's matter, the following time was particularly peaceful. Colin finally got his wish to live a regular and fulfilling life. With up to 15 hours of meditation per day, the progress of the second limit-breaking circle meditation method also increased rapidly. Just like that, 3 months later came soon,